My parents gave my child surgery, money to my sister. Dad said her business matters. Then my fiancé exposed his net worth. Now they are destitute. Dad spoke with a sense of pride. I didn't cry. I simply glanced at my fiancé. My sister's smile vanished as he got to his feet, took out his phone, and asked, "Should I tell them what I do for a living?" It was one of those restaurants where the silverware was more expensive than my first vehicle. It was a special dinner choice made by my fiancé, Adam. My parents would take us more seriously in a fancy setting, he had told me when I questioned the decision, because it would demonstrate that we were mature, responsible adults who were worth the investment. To argue had been too much for me. In retrospect, I saw that he already knew exactly what would happen this evening. With her hand never leaving mine, my daughter Ella sat next to me. She was 8 years old and knew more than a child should. She had learned about pain, hospitals, and abruptly ending conversations when she entered rooms thanks to the tumor pressing against her spinal cord. 2 weeks prior, she had inquired about her impending death. Lying that everything would be all right, I held her. However, the surgery was $220,000, and our insurance had twice rejected the claim, claiming it was an elective procedure even though 3 separate medical reviews had confirmed it was necessary. It took my parents 20 minutes to get there. Mom wore the Chanel jacket she had been raving about on Facebook the previous month. Dad was wearing his Rolex as a self-gift for the anniversary. With that special smile she had honed over 34 years, my sister Harper entered behind them. The person who claimed to have won the game we were playing. As Harper kissed the air close to my cheek, she said, "Sorry we're late." There was terrible traffic coming from the spa. Before bringing out chairs for the women, Adam stood and shook hands with my father. He had insisted on covering the cost of this meal in spite of our predicament. His response to my protest was, "Trust me." Those 2 words had carried me through the previous 4 months. Adam rarely talked about his job and finance at home because it involved complicated international accounts. He had been Ella's father in ways that went beyond biology during our 10-month engagement. The waiter delivered menus. Harper placed the most costly wine order without consulting anyone else. It was the norm. From birth she had been the perfect child, the one who could do no wrong. She was discovering herself, which is why she left college twice. I was boasting after working 3 jobs to complete my degree. The majority of their money was stolen by the real estate developer she had married, who left her for his secretary. Her credit card debt, down payment on a new condo, and legal fees had all been paid for by my parents. They had never once offered to assist me in any way. After we'd given the order, Dad said, his voice full of the authority he enjoyed using in the boardroom, "You stated that this was crucial." I opened my mouth to speak, but my throat shut. My hand was squeezed by Ella. Adam's sister had wanted her to stay at home, but I needed her here. I had to show my parents what was involved. Adam spoke in its place. "Because Ella needs surgery, we're here. There is a deadline. We have a limited amount of time before the tumor causes permanent paralysis, according to the doctors, and it is still growing." Something might have been worried in Mom's face as it flickered. "Oh no, honey, that's awful. But your insurance undoubtedly rejected it." "I did it. It's not medically necessary. They're calling it elective. We've made 2 appeals. Ella has no chance of winning in the long run, but our attorney says we might. Before the neurological damage becomes irreparable, she has 4 weeks." It became real when the number was revealed. Ella's fingers gripped me more tightly. Harper took a sip of wine. "It's really terrible. What do you think your parents will do about it though?" I had anticipated this query. In the shower, in the car, and in the mirror, I had practiced it. "I'm making a loan request. The procedure will cost $220,000. Anything? I'll sign. Accept any conditions. My house is my collateral. I need help right now, but I'll work for the rest of my life if necessary." Dad sliced his steak. The plate scraped against the knife. "A significant sum of money, that is." "I understand. And you know this surgeon for sure?" "Have you consulted others?" Adam responded. "In 4 states we have conferred with 8 experts. The greatest choice is Dr. Patterson at Johns Hopkins. He has performed this procedure successfully and with great results for years. All the insurance company wants to do is prevent suffering." Harper added that it was still dangerous. "Surgery is always dangerous after all. Perhaps you should hold off to see if the insurance pays out." Ella made a tiny noise. Not a whimper exactly, but close. Harper's flawlessly applied makeup made me want to hurl my water glass at her. "The tumor won't wait," Adam said in a cold, level voice. "The likelihood of irreversible harm increases daily. Mom patted my hand from the other side of the table. The gesture was performed and intended to be observed. We want to help, sweetie. Indeed we do. However, that type of money is not simple. Each of us has responsibilities. As in, what? I had not meant for the words to sound so harsh. Dad clenched his jaw. He was averse to being questioned, such as home maintenance, retirement planning, and your mother's medical costs. Years ago, when I assisted them with filing their taxes, I had viewed their bank statements. Their investments totaled more than $2.5 million. They paid off the house. Botox and dermatologist facials were Mom's medical bills. She made a wellness doctor's call. I'm not requesting a gift, I said. Let me write it down. Interest will be paid by me. Anything you require. Harper relaxed in her seat. Do you know what the issue is? You've always felt such pride. Until you're in dire need, you're too proud to seek assistance. You then assume that everyone will simply stop caring. I was astounded by that statement's audacity. Harper, who had made so many requests for money that I couldn't even remember. Harper, who borrowed $6,000 from me 8 years prior, never brought it up again. Harper, an adult who had returned home 4 times. I muttered, that's unfair. Sweetheart, life is unfair. Harper's grin got bigger. You made your decisions. An infant was born to you. You have chosen a low-paying profession. You halt. Mom's voice broke the tense silence. This is not useful. There was a pause across the table. The eatery went on all around us. While my entire world was falling apart in the corner booth, other families were having a great time eating. Dad cleared his throat. Since your call, we have been talking about this. I have discussed it in great detail with your mother. I felt a blaze of hope. Brilliant and painful. He went on. We've decided we can give you some money. Not all of it, but enough to make a difference. To what extent? Adam inquired. $300,000. Hope perished. It wouldn't even cover the anesthesiologist with $30,000. Dad raised his hand as I was about to say this. Nevertheless, the world swung slightly when he stated, we've also decided to help Harper. She's been through a difficult time with the divorce and she's trying to start over. We want to support both our daughters. Mom smiled. What do you mean help Harper? She did smile. We're providing her with the funds we allocated for your request. Harper wants to open a store. She has always had a lot of creativity, and now is her opportunity to succeed. A storefront? The words were illogical, so I repeated them. You're using the money from my daughter's surgery to finance a boutique. It's not your money, Harper blurted out. They own the funds. With it, they are free to do as they please. My shoulder was touched by Adam's hand. He had a firm anchoring grip. I said, how much? How much are you giving her? Dad managed to look a little awkward. Harper's business endeavor will receive a $175,000 investment from us. Naturally it's a loan, but we don't need to pay it back right away. She will reimburse us once the business turns a profit. The figures weren't even attempting to conceal this. The precise amount I had requested had been taken and given to my sister. To maintain deniability and act as though they were assisting us both equally, they were holding on to $30,000. Adam said, just to be clear, in a perfectly composed voice. Instead of funding your granddaughter's medical surgery, you've decided to fund a boutique. Mom said, we don't see it that way. We're supporting our 2 daughters. Harper is deserving of a better life. She has experienced a great deal. What has Ella experienced? I asked the question, clearly and sharply. What specifically has happened to my 8-year-old that is less significant than Harper's lifestyle decisions? Harper yelled, don't be so dramatic. She's not actually dying. Ella's hand withdrew from mine. I heard her take a sharp breath, the kind that precedes tears. Adam knelt next to her chair and whispered something I couldn't hear right away by her side. Indeed, I stated, observing my sister, that paralysis is certain to occur within 4 months in the absence of surgery. Indeed, the tumor has the potential to be fatal, so perhaps be more cautious with what you say about my daughter's life. Ladies, please. When Mom wanted everyone to just get along so she wouldn't have to deal with conflict, her voice had that beseeching quality. There's no need for a fight. We are all related. Father gave a nod. We have decided what to do. We consider it balanced and fair. Harper deserves this chance, and we want to help her. You'll find a solution for Ella. You do it every time. The dismissal was obvious. They had already decided before they had even gotten to the restaurant. They were merely using this dinner as a theatrical opportunity to declare their choice and feel generous with the meager $30,000 they were giving away. Dad said, "She deserves a better life," pointing to Harper. "She deserves this opportunity after everything she has been through." As if he had done something honorable by picking one daughter's business endeavor over the other daughter's child. He spoke with pride. As if this were wisdom, rather than brutality. I didn't cry. Over the last 4 months I've shed enough tears. I sobbed in the shower, in my car during lunch breaks, and in hospital parking lots. I sobbed until all I had left was a cold, crystal-clear knowledge of my parents' identities. Rather, I pivoted to face Adam. After consoling Ella, he had returned to his seat, and his expression was unreadable. When our gazes locked, I noticed something I had never noticed before. Not sympathy, not even fury. Calculation was involved. He slowly got to his feet and reached into his jacket pocket. His phone appeared, svelte and pricey. He looked at my father while holding it loosely, almost carelessly. "Should I tell them what I do for a living?" asked him. In the air hung the question. Harper started to lose her smile. Just moments before she was radiant with triumph. Now a hint of doubt appeared on her face. "You work in finance," Dad remarked sarcastically. "We know that I do," concurred Adam. "In particular, I work at Whitmore and Associates as a senior partner." Adam went on, his voice conversational. "I manage a portfolio of about $850 million. The number landed like a bomb. I manage a portfolio of about $850 million. Not counting bonuses, my annual salary is $1.3 million. Last year my bonus was $3.8 million. I've been hesitant to discuss this because your daughter values privacy, and I didn't want our relationship to be about money." Harper's smile had vanished entirely, her face pale under her makeup. Adam looked at my parents and said, "We have more than enough for Ella's surgery. We haven't needed your money. My assets, savings and investment accounts are all mine." "Adam, I wanted you to ask them," he said, turning to face me. "You needed to know who they really are, what they would choose when it mattered." I felt lightheaded. We could pay for this surgery 10 times over without feeling it. His gaze returned to my parents, and now we all know. Dad's face was flushed. "Why put us through this charade?" Adam explained that it wasn't a charade for me because I sincerely hoped that they would make the right decision when faced with their granddaughter's life. I was mistaken, and I apologize, but I needed to know the type of people I was getting married to. "The money I have doesn't change the decision you made. You let us think. You manipulated." "I noticed," Adam corrected. "There's a difference. We came here asking for help, and you revealed exactly who you are." He took out his wallet and put a credit card on the table. "Dinner's on me. Everything, including Harper's pricey wine." Harper found her voice. "You'll have to live with your decision that your daughter's boutique was more valuable than your granddaughter's health." Mom reached for me saying, "Sweetie, if we'd known." I withdrew from her grasp, realizing that Adam had money. That only matters if you were making a financial decision rather than a moral one. Ella needed surgery either way. That didn't change. "This isn't fair." Harper raised her voice and said, "You set us up. You made us look bad on purpose." Adam laughed sharply. "No one made you do anything. You were offered a chance to help a child, your niece, and you chose not to. The fact that it turns out we don't need your money doesn't change the choice you made." Dad objected, saying, "That's not nothing." "You're right, Standing. It's not nothing. It's insulting. It's the minimum amount you thought you could offer while still claiming you helped. It's a tip, not assistance." I picked up Ella, who put her arms around my neck. She was getting too big to carry comfortably, but I had to hold her. Adam put his hand on my back and led the way out. "Wait," Mom called. "Please don't leave like this. We can talk about this." "There's nothing to talk about," I said without looking back. "You made your choice. Harper gets her boutique. I hope it's everything she dreams of." "You're being childish," Harper yelled. I stopped and turned around, "Just because you fooled us." The whole restaurant was now watching, but I didn't care. I told them straight out. "I asked my parents to help save my daughter's life, and you all decided that financing a retail business was more important. Those are the facts. It's up to you what you do with that information." We went out, the cool evening air hitting my face as we walked to Adam's car, Ella sobbing softly against my shoulder, Adam opening the door and guiding us both inside before settling into the driver's seat. We were silent for a long time, the lights of the restaurant behind us glowing warm and inviting, utterly at odds with what had just transpired inside. I'm sorry, Adam said at the end of the trip. It must have been difficult. What kept you from telling me? I inquired about the money and about your plan. He replied, because you wouldn't have carried it out, claiming it was cruel or manipulative, but I needed you to see them clearly. Ella will soon be my legal daughter and we are getting married. I needed to know if they would be a good or bad influence in our lives, and he was right. It was too harsh, too calculated, and I would have refused, but sitting in that restaurant and seeing my parents put Harper's wants ahead of Ella's needs has made everything clear. They'll try to make amends. Adam said they'll get in touch after they've processed this and Harper's boutique eventually fails. Ella stirred against me and said, Mommy, why doesn't Grandma love me? She does, baby. She just doesn't know how to show it properly. That's a lie, Ella said softly. You don't have to lie anymore. I heard what they said. They'll want access to our life and the money they now know we have. You need to decide what that relationship looks like now. Adam caught my attention in the rearview mirror and said, Your grandparents made a bad choice tonight, Ella. But you're going to be okay. We're going to take care of you. The surgery is scheduled for next month and you're going to get better. Ella asked, Will I see them again? Adam replied, That's up to your mom, and eventually up to you. The drive home that evening felt surreal. After 10 minutes of silence during which neither of us spoke, I finally said, I keep replaying the look on Dad's face when he said Harper deserves a better life. Ella dozed off in the back seat, worn out from the emotional toll. Adam's hand found mine across the console, his thumb tracing circles on my palm. Like it was clear. Like it was the only logical conclusion. Adam squeezed my hand. He got it. That's why it's so heartbreaking. He really believed that funding a boutique was the same as saving a child's life. How did you manage to remain so composed? I asked. I wanted to scream. I wanted to turn the tables. Years of practice concealing my thoughts. When we got home, I carried Ella upstairs and tucked her into bed. She stirred as I pulled the blanket up. Mom. Yes, baby. Are we going to be okay? I smoothed her hair back. We're going to be more than okay, I promise. He said it's a skill you develop in finance, but trust me, I wanted to do much more than flip a table. I asked myself, is that what it takes to keep you safe and loved properly, even without Grandma and Grandpa? She nodded and closed her eyes, and I watched her for a long time, this courageous little girl who had been through so much, the scar on her back from the biopsy. Adam was in his office downstairs, with his laptop open, several screens displaying financial charts and documents I couldn't understand. I'm setting up a trust, he said without looking up Ella's needs, including education, medical bills and anything else she might need. She had learned to ask me if we could afford things before requesting them, and she was already 8 years old and carrying burdens no child should know. Adam, and I'm having my lawyer draft a document that explicitly excludes your parents from any medical decisions. If something were to happen to you, they would have no rights. My sister, not them, would be granted guardianship. I sank into the chair across from his desk. You really think they try to interfere? He looked at me at last. People who prioritize money over a child's health can justify anything, in my opinion. I'm not taking any chances with Ella's future. When I woke up the following morning, I had 17 missed calls. It was obvious that my parents had spent the entire night attempting to get in touch with me. The voicemails ranged from confused to angry to pleading, and I deleted them all without listening past the first few seconds. Work was a welcome diversion. My boss had been very understanding of Ella's medical condition during my 4 years as the marketing director of a small tech company. My co-worker Jacob was waiting with coffee at my desk when I got there. How'd it go with your parents? Jacob's mouth dropped when I told him about the dinner and how desperately I needed help, but I hadn't mentioned Adam's plan or his income. Instead, they decided to fund my sister's boutique. You're kidding, I wish I was. What are you going to do? Can you borrow money? Create a GoFundMe? Actually, I said, sitting down and logging into my computer. Adam had the money all along and he wanted to see what choice they'd make. Jacob was silent for a moment, but I said, that's either brilliant or cruel. I can't decide which. Neither can I. My phone rang and I said, Mom again? Jacob said, they're not taking the hint, adding, they're probably still in shock. Give them a few days to get angry. That's when the real messages will start. I was correct, and by Wednesday the tone had changed. Dad texted me, accusing me of being manipulative and ungrateful, and Mom sent a lengthy email about how I was destroying the family. You always have to be the victim, Harper wrote in her voicemail, calling me every derogatory term she could think of. You always have to make everything about you, Harper said. You threw a fit because you didn't get your way, despite Mom and Dad's best efforts to assist us both. Get over it. Your child and you are not the center of the world. Adam brought some news home Thursday night, so I decided to save that voicemail in case I needed it later. Your sister visited my workplace today. Helping Ella with her homework, I looked up. How about this? She demanded to see me when she arrived at the front desk. She made a scene before security escorted her out. His tie was untied. She was screaming that she was going to sue me for emotional distress because I had destroyed her life and deceived everyone. Would she be able to do that? Well, she could try. It will cost her money that she does not possess. He filled a glass for himself. The parking garage was where your parents were waiting. I believe they had coordinated it. My abdomen constricted. Did they come over to you? It was your dad, asked to speak with a man-to-man. We had nothing to talk about, I informed him, and I threatened to obtain a restraining order if any of them returned to my place of employment. With her pencil frozen over her math worksheet, Ella was observing us. I feigned a smile. Don't worry, my love, only mature drama. There's nothing to worry about. Although she didn't seem persuaded, she went back to her assignments. I finally broke down that night after Ella had gone to sleep. Adam discovered me sobbing into a towel to block out the sound while sitting on the floor in the bathroom. They were meant to cherish her. I passed out. She's their granddaughter. How could they put Harper's money ahead of Ella's life? Why would anyone do that? Adam pulled me in close as he sat next to me. The type of people who, in the first place, had no right to be parents. I'm thinking about my childhood all the time. Dad is showing me how to ride a bike. My mom is creating my Halloween outfits. Did those individuals ever exist? Or was I merely helpful until I wasn't? Perhaps both, said Adam softly. You can be loved by people who are essentially self-centered. The hurt caused by selfishness is not lessened by love. Friday introduced a fresh strategy. Mom's sister, Aunt Elizabeth, gave me a call. We had been close all along. She had taken care of me while my parents were away. The same person who had attended my college graduation but had not attended Harper's rehabilitation graduation. I was asked to call by your mother, she said. She's heartbroken. Both are. Indeed, they ought to be. I am not calling to take sides, my love. I simply want you to know that they are having difficulty with this. They believed they were reaching a well-rounded conclusion. They offered me $30,000 for Ella's surgery and gave Harper $175,000 for a boutique on Elizabeth. How do you balance that? Sighing, she said. It sounds awful when you put it like that. Because it is bad, it sounds bad. Your mother said that you weren't truly in need and that Adam had money all along. Could we have been truly desperate and it would have been acceptable? I said. Would it have been okay if they had picked Harper's boutique even though we had no other options? Naturally not. Then nothing changes with Adam's money. Based on their perception of reality, they made a decision. They made the wrong decision. Aunt Elizabeth kept to herself. You are correct. Sorry, I should not have made the call. Please tell them to stop, but it's all right. Don't call. Put an end to your appearances. Don't send anyone to speak with me. They came to a decision. Mine is mine. It was a calm weekend in contrast. Adam brought us to a zoo. As she enthusiastically read the information plaques and pointed out animals, Ella laughed for the first time in days. Adam let Ella order whatever she wanted when we were at the cafe for lunch. Ella remarked, "This is nice." On her chin, chocolate ice cream. Just the two of us. Just the two of us. I wiped her face and nodded. I glanced at Adam over Ella's head. The look on his face was a mixture of sadness and resolve. We were creating our own family, excluding those who didn't pass the most basic test of love. My parents' unity began to erode on Monday morning. I answered when Mom called from an unknown number, assuming it was from Ella's school or the hospital. Please don't hang up, she promptly said. Your father and I had a heated argument about the money, Harper, and you. I just need 5 minutes. I should have disconnected right then. You have to. Her voice cracked. I've made a lot of mistakes with you. Favoring Harper and turning a blind eye when she mistreated you. He's saying that I'm too soft, that you're being manipulative, and that we should stand firm, but I can't stop thinking about Ella. You should have thought about Ella at dinner. Mom went on. I want to make this right. I know you don't need the money now, but I want to give it to you anyway. For Ella's surgery, for her recovery, whatever you need, I'll take it from the money we gave Harper. I told myself it was because she needed more support, because she struggled more. In reality though, it was easier to give in to her than to stand up for you. I'd be upset, but I don't care anymore. You're my daughter, Ella is my granddaughter, and I should have picked you. It was the closest thing to an apology I'd ever received from her, and I wanted to believe that she had finally realized her mistake. But what does Dad think of this silence? However, another part, the part that had seen her smile as she explained why Harper deserved more, was impossible to forget. Thank you, Mom. I truly do. But it's too late. Please. You didn't just make a financial error. You showed what you stood for. Ella was sitting there when you said Harper deserves a better life. She heard everything you said, and she later asked me why you don't love her. I can't expose her to people who might make her feel less valuable than her cousins or less deserving of love or support. I can't risk her internalizing the same treatment I received. I'm not trying to hurt you, but I'm done protecting your feelings at the expense of my daughter's well-being. You made your choice. This is mine, Mom sobbed over the phone, and I hung up before she could reply. I then saved her new number in my contacts as Mom. That must have been difficult. Adam had been listening from the doorway. Do not answer, so I'd recognize it if she called again. I said, it was necessary. She wants absolution without consequences. That's not how this works. 2 weeks later, my phone was buzzing with messages, first from Mom, then from Dad, and finally from Harper. The boutique had failed, and the property owner had backed out of the lease after realizing Harper's experience was non-existent and her business plan was incomplete. Ella's surgery was set for the following Tuesday. Dr. Patterson had been able to move up her slot after another patient postponed, and the timing was ideal. Harper was demanding that my parents sue him, and they asked if we could help with legal fees. I blocked all of their numbers, including Mom's new one. We would be finished before my family could cause more drama. Dr. Patterson came out 7 hours after Ella's surgery, which took place on a Tuesday morning 4 weeks after the disastrous dinner, and informed us that everything went well. The tumor was removed completely, and although she would require physical therapy, a full recovery was anticipated. I cried in Adam's arms in the waiting room, letting go of months of anxiety and stress. Harper arrived at the hospital with us in the surgical recovery wing waiting area, her hair unwashed, her makeup smeared, and a desperate expression. Harper must have called around to find out where we were, likely hounding mutual acquaintances until someone told her. She got past the front desk by posing as Ella's aunt. Please, she said. I needed to speak with you. My parents refused to answer my phone. They want the boutique money returned. They're threatening to prosecute me. Help is needed. You must go. I need a lawyer. Adam stood between her and me. My sister, I have a right. You have no rights here, Adam said icily. You made it clear where your priorities were. Now face the consequences. Security escorted her out, and I watched her leave, exhausted. Mom and Dad tried next, showing up with stuffed animals and flowers, smiling and cooing over Ella as if the dinner had never taken place. Ella accepted their gifts politely but refused to talk to them. They left after 15 minutes of awkward small talk. In the parking garage, Dad cornered me while Mom diverted Adam's attention. He said in a low voice, "You know this makes you just as bad as us, cutting us off because we made one mistake using money to manipulate relationships. You're no better." I carefully examined this man, who had helped me with my homework, taught me how to ride a bike, and escorted me down the aisle at my first wedding. I said, "There's a difference. I'm not manipulating you with money. I'm protecting my daughter from people who valued a boutique over her life." He recoiled. "I would have given you the money if Ella was fine and Harper was sick. I would have helped without conditions or tests. You failed one." "We didn't know Adam was wealthy, which is why it can't be forgiven," I said. "You could have chosen differently if you had known. However, that would have been for the incorrect reasons. Ella is a child who needed assistance, so you should have picked her." He was standing by himself among the cars when I left, saying, "The money should never have mattered." We went home, ordered pizza, and watched movies until Ella fell asleep on the couch with me. My phone buzzed, and I saw a text from an unknown number. 6 months later, Ella walked without assistance for the first time since surgery, and both her physical therapist and I sobbed. Adam recorded the entire event, narrating like a sports announcer, which made Ella laugh. Harper said, "The boutique failed. I'm bankrupt. Mom and Dad are suing me for the money. Please help." I blocked the number and deleted the message without replying. Later that night, Adam discovered me sitting on the back porch, staring at the stars, and he gave me tea and sat down next to me. "I'm your sister." I deleted the text without replying. "No regrets?" he asked. I gave it some serious thought. I regret that they made the decision they did, that Ella heard it, that this is who they are. he said. But cutting them off? No regrets about that. Harper's legal issues will likely drag on for months, and he predicted that your parents' case would eventually be lost. He paused and said, "How do you know that?" "I have friends in family law. They're talking about it. Your parents will probably lose most of that $175,000. Harper already spent a huge chunk of that on what? Apparently she went on a shopping spree before the boutique deal fell through. She never signed proper loan documents, and even if she had, she's got no assets to collect against. She thought she was going to be a successful business owner, so she spent money on things like a new car, furniture and clothes." I sipped my favorite tea, chamomile. I should feel something, like satisfaction or vindication, but I just feel exhausted, which is normal. Adam remarked. "They were your parents. Only the death of the person you believe them to be is necessary to grieve them. Were you aware? Did you know it would end this way when you first met them?" I inquired. "The way they talked about Harper versus how they talked about you, I suspected," he acknowledged. "The way they smiled courteously at you, and lit up for her. I noticed the pattern. All I needed was for you to see it too." Ella called out from inside, half awake and in need of water, so we went to her and tucked her back in. Her room was filled with drawings she had made during her recuperation, including stick figure families, rainbows and houses, all of which featured 3 people, her, Adam and me, and none of them included my parents. A year later, I got a formal, pricey wedding invitation in the mail from Mom and Dad, who were renewing their vows after 40 years of marriage. My name was on the envelope, but there was no personal note, just printed information and an RSVP card, so I threw it away. 2 days later, Mom called from a new number. This time I recognized the area code and was on the verge of not responding, but my curiosity won out. "Did you receive the invitation?" she asked in a cautious tone. "Yes, will you come? It would mean so much to us. Family should be there." "No," I replied plainly. "Please. Your father wants to reconcile. So do I. We miss Ella. We miss you. You chose this. You picked Harper's Boutique when you had the opportunity to assist Ella," I said. "You had the opportunity to come see us, but you decided to put yourself first. That was more than a year ago. You're going to hold on to that forever. Actions have consequences." "It was about the choice, not the money," I said. "When it counts, you showed who you are. I'm shielding my daughter from those who think she's not as valuable as their other grandchildren, their assets, or their reputation. Harper is in pain. She lives in a studio apartment," Mom whispered. "She is employed in retail, she has nothing." "Then a sister," I said. "You made that decision. Accept it." "How about us?" Mom's voice broke. "Are we not worthy of forgiveness?" I said, "I don't hate you, but forgiveness isn't the same as a relationship. I simply do not trust you, and I will not expose Ella to untrustworthy individuals." I ended the call and blocked the new number. Later, Adam discovered the invitation in the garbage. "Your mother called?" "Yeah." "How are you feeling?" "Free," I uttered. "Is that incorrect? Shouldn't I feel depressed or guilty?" His words were, "You feel how you feel. They made their decision, yours was yours. That is the way consequences operate." After returning from school, Ella burst into the kitchen, full of tales about her day. She had made the soccer team, her legs were now strong and fully recovered, and she was thriving. She didn't inquire about grandparents, and Adam and I listened to her rambling about practice, her friends, and the science project she wanted to begin. She was content in the family we created, the one that had arrived when it counted, and she didn't bring up the invitation she was unaware of. I looked at the text when my phone buzzed and saw another unknown number. "This is cruel," I said. "Your parents are us." I turned off my phone and erased it without replying, saying, "We deserve better than this." Ella took hold of my hand. "Is it possible for us to bake cookies?"
Second.
Adam said we could try the recipe with peanut butter and chocolate chips. Adam was already removing the mixing bowls behind me when I said, "Absolutely," allowing her to lead me to the pantry. Our house was cozy, spacious and secure. Harper was working a job she thought was beneath her, and she blamed everyone but herself for her predicament, while outside my parents were organizing their anniversary party, likely making excuses for why one of their daughters refused to come. Together with my daughter, who was able to walk, run, and live fully because we had saved her without them, I was baking cookies. Some people believe that family is everything, that forgiveness is required by blood, that parents should have unlimited opportunities, and that sisters should always stand by one another. Those people haven't seen their parents prioritize money over their children's lives, but I have, and I made the right decision. Yeah. How are you feeling? Free? I uttered. Is that incorrect? Shouldn't I feel depressed or guilty? His words were, you feel how you feel. They made their decision. Yours was yours. That is the way consequences operate. After returning from school, Ella burst into the kitchen, full of tales about her day. She had made the soccer team, her legs were now strong and fully recovered, and she was thriving. She didn't inquire about grandparents, and Adam and I listened to her rambling about practice, her friends, and the science project she wanted to begin. She was content in the family we created, the one that had arrived when it counted, and she didn't bring up the invitation she was unaware of. I looked at the text when my phone buzzed and saw another unknown number. This is cruel, I said. Your parents are us. I turned off my phone and erased it without replying, saying, we deserve better than this. Ella took hold of my hand. Is it possible for us to bake cookies? Adam said we could try the recipe with peanut butter and chocolate chips. Adam was already removing the mixing bowls behind me when I said, absolutely, allowing her to lead me to the pantry. Our house was cozy, spacious, and secure. Harper was working a job she thought was beneath her, and she blamed everyone but herself for her predicament, while outside my parents were organizing their anniversary party, likely making excuses for why one of their daughters refused to come. Together with my daughter, who was able to walk, run, and live fully because we had saved her without them, I was baking cookies. Some people believe that family is everything, that forgiveness is required by blood, that parents should have unlimited opportunities, and that sisters should always stand by one another. Those people haven't seen their parents prioritize money over their children's lives, but I have, and I made the right decision. I'd paid for my sister's rent for years, but when I refused to buy her a car, my father kicked me out and forged my signature to take a loan on my car. My father insisted that I purchase a car for my sister, insisting that it was simply a little gesture of assistance. This was despite the fact that I had been paying her rent for a number of years. I declined his demand, and as a result, he evicted me. He then faked my signature and used it to take out a loan on my own automobile. I got a phone call from the bank 5 days after that. When everything ultimately became irreparable, I was 82 years old. Throughout my whole life there have been these cracks, these hairline fractures that have been making their way through the core of our relationships, and they have been becoming bigger with each passing year. My mother's birthday celebration was held for the evening. We congregated in a circle around the dining table at which we had sat for a multitude of Sunday meals and holiday celebrations. My father, who had his severe countenance as always, looked at my sister Sophie with a look of approval, and Sophie basked in his sight. But as for myself, I was a source of disappointment for the family despite the fact that I had a secure career and a self-sufficient lifestyle. The evening continued in the same way that all of these family get-togethers had. Sophie then dropped her bombshell. While twirling a piece of spaghetti on her fork, she stated, I am considering the purchase of a new car. My father gave a nod of approval in response to the statement. Something cute. Maybe a convertible. Princess, you're due for this. I took a drink of the wine, attempting to swallow my annoyance in addition to the Cabernet. Sophie was 25 years old, worked part-time at a boutique, and resided in an apartment for which I was already paying half the rent. My parents, however, made sure to forget this particular detail whenever the subject of money came up. With an attitude that conveyed that he was expecting something, my father looked at me. The wine glass that I was holding was frozen in mid-air, hovering between the table and my lips, as I listened to my father ask, What do you think, son? You could help your sister out with this, right? How could they? I placed my glass down with great care. With a soft voice I stated, Her rent is already being paid for half by me. I believe that's sufficient, he said, causing the temperature in the room to decrease by 10 degrees. My father screamed, What is that supposed to be implying? His voice took on that deadly tone that I was all too familiar with. It means exactly what I said. I already support Sophie financially. I'm not buying her a car. Sophie made a pouty look with her lips, something she had perfected many times before. My jaw clenched as I said, I had the impression that things were going more smoothly for you at work. It's only a small amount of assistance. A small amount of assistance, similar to the minimal assistance that I had been providing to her for a number of years. The small amount of assistance that I had received had prohibited me from relocating to an apartment that was more comfortable or from taking the trip to Rome that I had been saving up for. I'm doing well at my job, but that doesn't mean I'm required to purchase a car for you, I said. The expression on my father's face grew somber. The typical guilt trip. This is how you repay your sister for all of the things that we have done for you. The ambiguous allusion to sacrifices that were not specified by name, the suggestion that since I was brought up, I owe my parents a debt of gratitude that I can never repay, even though raising children is a responsibility that parents are expected to do in the first place. Something within me gave way. What exactly have you done for me, Dad? Tell me. Because I paid for my own college. I bought my own car. I've been financially independent since I was 19. His pupils were filled with tears. You ungrateful? No, I'm not ungrateful. I'm tired. Tired of being treated like the family ATM while you act like Sophie is too precious to support herself. He slammed his fist down on the table and said, "It's because she is better than you." The words remained suspended in the air, resembling smoke. She has always been that way, was what was said. My mother let out a gasp. Sophie averted her gaze, but all I could feel was a sense of relief. The reality that I had always known was now expressed out loud. I let out a chuckle. I was unable to stop myself. Well, if she's so much better than me, I guess she doesn't need my help anymore. I rose to my feet, and the sound of my chair scraping against the floor's hardwood surface echoed throughout the room. My father rose to his feet and pointed in the direction of the exit as he said, "That means I won't be paying her rent next month or ever again." I hurriedly reached for my jacket so that I could say, "Leave my home with pleasure." By the way, Dad, maybe you should check who's been covering Sophie's rent for the past 4 years before you kick out your personal bank. Panic was evident on Sophie's face as her eyes became wide. I stopped for a while at the entrance and said, "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means I'm done. You've been living in that apartment for 4 years. I've paid half your rent for 4 years. Dad hasn't contributed a dime despite what he told you." Her mouth opened and closed as though it were a fish. "Dad was telling a fib," I stated plainly. "But Dad said, and now you're on your own." The beginning of the end was reached on that particular night. Or perhaps it marked the moment when I first experienced true independence. Point of view is an amusing concept. The aftermath was both immediate and catastrophic. Without my assistance, Sophie would be unable to pay for her rent. During that very first week, she phoned me 20 times, with the tone of her messages changing from aggressive demands to emotional begging. In spite of the fact that Dad made a number of audacious statements on family responsibility, he refused to take any action. His economic status was not as stable as he had made everyone believe it was. I cleared out the joint account that I had naively kept with Sophie to be prepared for any unforeseen circumstances. However, those unforeseen circumstances usually seemed to entail expensive shoes or weekend vacations with pals. Every month I made it a point to deposit money into it, and she handled the money as if it were her own personal savings account. My father was quite angry. He made the threat of selling my automobile, the vehicle that I purchased on my own when I was 19 years old and had completely paid off by the time I was 23. He completely lost his temper, hurled accusations of my untrustworthiness at me, and said that I was breaking the family apart as soon as I reminded him that the title was in my name. It was brought to my attention at a later time that he had indeed made an attempt to sell it nevertheless, going so far as to put it up for sale on the internet. The confrontation became unpleasant when I went to my parents' house in order to get it back. As I quietly packed my things into the trunk, my father could be heard shouting from the window about the importance of family devotion, with the neighbors peeking through their windows. Always more concerned with appearances than with the truth, my mother stood on the porch, wringing her hands and imploring us to cease causing a commotion. I was completely unaware at the time that my father had previously established a more intricate trap. 5 days after I went to pick up my automobile, I got a letter that seemed to be legitimate. When I read the following, my stomach turned. Notice of repossession regarding my automobile. There was no logical explanation for it. I had settled the debt on the automobile several years prior to this. Was named after me. I contacted the bank that was indicated on the notification via phone. I eventually spoke with an individual who was able to clarify the circumstances to me after I had been moved several times. My father had taken out a title loan on my car 6 months prior to this, as per their records. I felt a chill of fear go through my veins. There is no way that could happen, was what I declared. I have the title. He couldn't have done that. Sir, we have all the paperwork here, the representative continued. Signed by you. However, I had not signed anything at all. I asked for the paperwork and insisted that I have copies. I looked at them with a sense of incredulity when they came through to me via email an hour later. On loan documents that I had never seen before, there was a signature, or at least a signature that looked like mine. My father had faked my name, utilized my social security number, generated a flawless facsimile of my signature, which was likely copied from old school paperwork he'd kept, and done all of these things without my consent. I felt as though I had been raped in a way that I could not put into words. This was more than simply a manipulation of the finances. This is an instance of identity theft. This was a criminal act. I was immersed in a cloud of feelings of betrayal and anger for the subsequent 5 days. This had been something that my father had been working on for some months. He had been making plans to use my property, which was my vehicle, as collateral in order to earn money for himself. All the while he was insisting that I contribute to the care of his preferred child. The bank shown sympathy while also being resolute. They would repossess the automobile if I did not repay the $8,500 debt that my father had taken out. I was constrained in my choice. Repay a debt that I never borrowed, bring false allegations against my own father, or forfeit my means of transportation. I decided to go with the fourth available choice. With the funds that were left over after I paid off the bogus loan, I was able to purchase a more affordable automobile. I sold the car on my own. Even while it resulted in a substantial reduction in status, it did break one more link between my father and me. He made a call to me in a fit of anger when he found out about the actions I had taken. How could I be so disrespectful as to sell that car? Did I not realize that he was in dire need of that money? Did I not comprehend the extent to which the family would be affected by this? Without giving a response, I ended the call. I could no longer consider his issues to be my own. However, the most severe act of betrayal was still in the future. 5 weeks after the disastrous dinner, I found out that my father had been systematically draining our family savings account, which I had been contributing to since I was 18 years old and got my first job. He had been taking out loans against it, using the money to cover his own faltering business ventures as well as Sophie's shopping habits. That account was still in my name. The following morning, I went to the bank and took out every last cent, which came to a total of $8,500. Following the things he had stolen, it was only right that it was mine, even though it was not a large sum of money. After that, I terminated the account. That afternoon, I received a phone call. The name of my father appeared on the screen. His voice was a mixture of both rage and panic as he shouted, "What the hell do you think you're doing?" I responded with a voice that was more even than I felt within, saying, "Taking what's mine before you steal the rest." He yelled out, "I desperately needed that money." I could feel my heart pounding, not from fear, but from clarity, as I realized that the collectors were going to arrive the following week. Family has never been a factor in this. Its primary purpose was to take advantage of me. That is an issue for me no more. You can't do this to us. We're family. Family doesn't steal from each other. Dad. I hung up. He has put his number on a block list. Sophie's account has been blocked as well. I replaced the locks on the door to my flat. It was insufficient. I returned to my flat 4 days after I left it, and the door was standing slightly open. My television, my laptop, and the watch that had been given to me by my grandpa were all missing. The spare key that I possessed had been taken without my permission by my father, who got it from my mother's emergency contact list. I reported the incident to the police and submitted a written statement. They discovered my equipment at a pawn shop that was located on the other side of town. The receipt had the signature of the person of whom the proprietor had a vivid recollection, which was my father. I promised to pursue charges unless my father returned every single dollar he had ever taken from me, and I went as far as to seek a lawyer and record a phone conversation with him in which he admitted to the theft. I severed all connections, and he paid off every bit of his debt. The decision that I came to entirely cut all ties with my family was not one that was taken on a whim. It occurred following nights of packing up my flat, my hands shaking, doubting all that I believed to be true about family and commitment. It was instilled in me from a young age that the relationships between family members were indestructible and holy, and that you forgave your family regardless of the situation since blood relations were more important than anything else. Even while he methodically abused and diminished me, my father had been repeating these mantras to me throughout my childhood. It was difficult to breathe as a result of the cognitive dissonance. How could I ever turn my back on the individuals who brought me up? That is the type of individual that abandons their family and leaves them entirely. However, what sort of parent steals from his own child? What type of father forges signatures and steals money from bank accounts? What sort of parent forcibly enters his child's residence? The feeling of remorse from leaving was in conflict with the dread of remaining attached. I composed pages that listed both the advantages and negatives. I contacted an old therapist, and I discussed it with the two friends who were aware of the entire issue. The moment of transformation occurred around 3 o'clock in the morning one night. While I was laying awake and my stomach was tied up in knots, a straightforward query spontaneously appeared in my head. The answer to the question, would I allow anyone else to treat me this way, was both instantaneous and unambiguous. That clarity did not make the decision any simpler. No. Never. So why was I allowing it from people who were supposed to love me more than anyone else? It only rendered it a requirement. As far as my family was concerned, I relocated to a new apartment, switched jobs, and went entirely off the radar. In some cases, the only way to begin the healing process is to distance oneself from the origin of the suffering. The initial months during which we did not communicate with each other were the most difficult. I remained empty within, and I did not note the passage of any birthdays. I would use my phone to send Sophie a text message telling her about a movie that she might enjoy, or I would give my mom a call when I prepared one of her dishes. Only then would I be able to recall that they were no longer a part of my life. If I were in that situation, I would question if I had made the correct decision, whether I was overreacting, and whether I should simply apologize and attempt to make amends. After that, I would remember the theft, the lies, and the years of manipulation. And I would hang up the phone. When the flat was too silent and my thoughts seemed too loud, I would begin to question myself at night. Did I display cruelty or selfishness? What would happen if they required my assistance? What would happen if they felt remorse? However, I was aware on some level that the sequence would simply keep repeating itself. My mother would support me, my father would control me, Sophie would take advantage of me, and I would be left feeling exhausted and empty, wondering why I could never be good enough. I therefore stood my ground. I created new traditions and met new individuals who appreciated me for the person I am, rather than for what I was able to provide them. After some time, the unhealed wound of separation started to mend itself, ultimately transforming into something that looked like peace. Sophie sent me an email 6 months after that. She has a child on the way. The father had gone somewhere else. She is someone who requires assistance. She wrote, "We're family." My finger remained poised over the button to send a response for quite a while as I gazed at the words, "Family sticks together." I had a desire to rush in and save her in order to demonstrate that I was a decent individual and a nice brother, which sprang from the part of me that had been trained over the course of many years to feel guilty and obligated. However, there was another element that acknowledged the old pattern, the crisis, the appeal to family loyalty, and the expectation that I would put aside my limits because she required my assistance. This was the component that I was beginning to pay attention to. I did not instantly give a response. Rather, I stared at the email that was open in front of me, reflecting on my emotions. There was pity for her circumstances, compassion for the unborn kid, and a reflexive need to repair things. Nevertheless, I was also afflicted with an overwhelming sense of exhaustion, as well as the awareness that the cycle would never come to an end unless I was the one to put an end to it. I did not reply to the email before closing it. I continued on with my life, and after taking some time to consider the matter further, I tagged it as spam that evening. 5 years have passed since that time. I'm able to see the city from my new flat. On 2 separate occasions, I've received a promotion in my place of employment. I go on trips whenever I choose to do so. There is no one who makes me feel bad for setting limits or who takes money out of my bank accounts. Sometimes the act of healing entails leaving something behind. There are times when the appropriate course of action is not to attempt to repair something that is broken, but rather to acknowledge the fact that certain things were not constructed correctly from the very beginning. I encountered my mother at the supermarket store just last week. Our gazes crossed over one another when we were standing in the vegetable aisle. She appeared to be older and fatigued. For a little time I experienced a feeling of something, not quite grief, not quite remorse, but more like a reminder of what could have been if I had grown up in a different household. She came closer to me with caution, as if I were going to run away. I might have at some point in the past. Her gaze took in my appearance as she replied, "You look well." I gave a sign with my head. "I am well." She adjusted and readjusted the strap of her purse. My heart started beating faster when I heard, "Your father had a heart attack last month." The patterns of the past are difficult to break. I anticipated the guilt trip, the manipulation, and the assumption that I would rush back to help him. "Is he okay?" He'll recover, but it was serious. With the checkbook in my possession, it did not arrive. Rather, she stated, "I've been considering everything that's been going on." I felt my throat constrict in an unexpected way as I said, "I should have stepped in. I should have protected you. You weren't supposed to do that according to the script." "I do agree that you were supposed to do that." Tears began to form in her eyes. "I am not asking for you to forgive me or him. I just wanted you to know that I understand why you left," I said. I nodded, unable to trust myself to talk. Even after 5 years of being apart, her straightforward acknowledgement still has the ability to elicit a strong emotional response from me. She quietly told me, "Sophie named her child after you." I continued to gaze at the apples that I was holding in my hand, which I had suddenly become rather fascinated by due to their glossy crimson skin. "She is still residing with you," I continued. "However, she is attempting to make things work, as she is currently employed full-time and attending classes at night." I could only feel a sense of distant pity. Good for her, I thought to myself. My mother appeared as if she wanted to say something else, but she stopped herself. She extended her hand instead, paused for a moment, and then gently touched my arm. "I'm proud of you," she whispered. "I should have said that more." The words enveloped me like fallen leaves, too late to change the season, but still somehow meaningful. We never exchanged phone numbers or made plans to get together again. Some bridges that have been burned are beyond repair. However, as I watched her walk away, I felt a change within myself. It was not exactly forgiveness. I was not prepared for that. Perhaps I would never be prepared for that, but I did experience understanding. I came to the realization that we were all broken in our own unique ways, acting out patterns that had been set long before we had any opportunity to make our own choices. The truth of the matter is that the decision to cut off all communication was not the result of a single moment of anger. Rather, it was the culmination of thousands of small decisions that were made on a daily basis over the course of several years. These decisions included choosing not to make a phone call when I felt lonely, not reaching out to the other party during holidays, and not responding to the occasional messages that I received from them through mutual acquaintances. Every single decision came with its own grief, its own questioning, and its own internal struggle between what I had been taught to value and what I required in order to survive. There were times when I would wonder if it was too extreme to completely cut them off, if there might have been some middle ground, some careful distance rather than complete separation. However, if I did, I would be reminded of the offense of having my identity stolen, the betrayal I had when I discovered that my apartment had been destroyed, the several years during which I was only appreciated for the contributions I could make and never for who I was as a person. And I would know with a conviction that went bone deep that not being in contact with anybody had been the only feasible option for me to take in order to heal. The nickname Golden Child had always been used by my father when he referred to Sophie. However, gold is soft and malleable, and it bends when pressure is applied to it. What he failed to realize was that the pressure he applied to me had transformed me into something stronger, in the same way that carbon is transformed into diamond when it is subjected to intense heat. The most important family is the one that you construct for yourself, the one that recognizes your value without requiring you to demonstrate it on a regular basis. I have discovered that I have a great deal of worth in places where I did not expect to find it. I have discovered that I have worth in the friends who appear without being invited, in colleagues who appreciate the contributions that I have made at my own company, which turns out to be superior to what I had previously thought it to be. Some people believe that blood is thicker than water. However, I have come to the conclusion that self-respect is thicker than the two of them combined. For anyone who is trapped in a family dynamic that saps your energy rather than providing you with sustenance, there is life on the other side. It is possible that it does not have the tidy conclusion that we have been led to believe we should anticipate. It is possible that it does not have reunions that are accompanied by tears, or scenes of forgiveness that are full of drama. But it does have peace. Quiet mornings in which you do not wake up dreading calls to be made. Holidays that are spent exactly as you wish them to be spent. And the deep understanding that your worth was never established by people who were unable to recognize it. On occasion, the most affectionate thing you can do for yourself and others is to step back and allow the fragments to fall wherever they may. To this day, I still have dreams of making amends, of a family that is mended and complete. However, dreams are not the same as delusions. I am now aware that some injuries never fully close, and that is acceptable. Breaking free is not simply a matter of distance. It involves the process of deprogramming, which entails rejecting the notion that refusing something makes you egotistical, that having boundaries makes you unkind, and that selecting yourself over others makes you a terrible person. It is the most difficult task I have ever undertaken, and it is still in progress. But for the first time in my life, I feel like I am living on my own terms. Not as a family disappointment, not as Sophie's sidekick, not as my father's ATM or my mother's peacemaker, but just as myself, complete and whole without requiring the validation or approval of anyone else. There is an unusual kind of sorrow that comes with this as well. I am mourning the family that I did not have and will never have. I searched for the unconditional love that I desired, but I never found it in the locations where it should have been most plentiful. However, there is also an enormous sense of freedom that comes from choosing my own path, defining what I consider to be my own value, and recognizing that although I did not choose the family I was born into, I have the power to decide how their influence will affect my future. And I make the decision to break the pattern in order to recover and flourish, not in spite of them, but because I have finally come to the realization that I am worthy of receiving more than what they were ready to provide. Flawless. I responded with a voice that was more even than I felt within, saying, "Taking what's mine before you steal the rest." He yelled out, "I desperately needed that money." I could feel my heart pounding, not from fear, but from clarity, as I realized that the collectors were going to arrive the following week. Family has never been a factor in this. Its primary purpose was to take advantage of me. That is an issue for me no more. You can't do this to us. We're family. Family doesn't steal from each other. Dad. I hung up. He has put his number on a block list. Sophie's account has been blocked as well. I replaced the locks on the door to my flat. It was insufficient. I returned to my flat 4 days after I left it, and the door was standing slightly open. My television, my laptop, and the watch that had been given to me by my grandpa were all missing. The spare key that I possessed had been taken without my permission by my father, who got it from my mother's emergency contact list. I reported the incident to the police and submitted a written statement. They discovered my equipment at a pawn shop that was located on the other side of town. The receipt had the signature of the person of whom the proprietor had a vivid recollection, which was my father. I promised to pursue charges unless my father returned every single dollar he had ever taken from me, and I went as far as to seek a lawyer and record a phone conversation with him in which he admitted to the theft. I severed all connections, and he paid off every bit of his debt. The decision that I came to entirely cut all ties with my family was not one that was taken on a whim. It occurred following nights of packing up my flat, my hands shaking, doubting all that I believed to be true about family and commitment. It was instilled in me from a young age that the relationships between family members were indestructible and holy, and that you forgave your family regardless of the situation since blood relations were more important than anything else. Even while he methodically abused and diminished me, my father had been repeating these mantras to me throughout my childhood. It was difficult to breathe as a result of the cognitive dissonance. How could I ever turn my back on the individuals who brought me up? That is the type of individual that abandons their family and leaves them entirely. However, what sort of parent steals from his own child? What type of father forges signatures and steals money from bank accounts? What sort of parent forcibly enters his child's residence? The feeling of remorse from leaving was in conflict with the dread of remaining attached. I composed pages that listed both the advantages and negatives. I contacted an old therapist, and I discussed it with the 2 friends who were aware of the entire issue. The moment of transformation occurred around 3 o'clock in the morning one night. While I was laying awake and my stomach was tied up in knots, a straightforward query spontaneously appeared in my head. The answer to the question, would I allow anyone else to treat me this way, was both instantaneous and unambiguous. That clarity did not make the decision any simpler. No, never. So why was I allowing it from people who were supposed to love me more than anyone else? It only rendered it a requirement. As far as my family was concerned, I relocated to a new apartment, switched jobs, and went entirely off the radar. In some cases, the only way to begin the healing process is to distance oneself from the origin of the suffering. The initial months during which we did not communicate with each other were the most difficult. I remained empty within, and I did not note the passage of any birthdays. I would use my phone to send Sophie a text message telling her about a movie that she might enjoy, or I would give my mom a call when I prepared one of her dishes. Only then would I be able to recall that they were no longer a part of my life. If I were in that situation, I would question if I had made the correct decision, whether I was overreacting, and whether I should simply apologize and attempt to make amends. After that, I would remember the theft, the lies, and the years of manipulation, and I would hang up the phone. When the flat was too silent and my thoughts seemed too loud, I would begin to question myself at night. Did I display cruelty or selfishness? What would happen if they required my assistance? What would happen if they felt remorse? However, I was aware on some level that the sequence would simply keep repeating itself. My mother would support me, my father would control me, Sophie would take advantage of me, and I would be left feeling exhausted and empty, wondering why I could never be good enough. I, therefore, stood my ground. I created new traditions and met new individuals who appreciated me for the person I am, rather than for what I was able to provide them. After some time, the unhealed wound of separation started to mend itself, ultimately transforming into something that looked like peace. Sophie sent me an email 6 months after that. She has a child on the way. The father had gone somewhere else. She is someone who requires assistance. She wrote, "We're family." My finger remained poised over the button to send a response for quite a while as I gazed at the words, "Family sticks together." I had a desire to rush in and save her in order to demonstrate that I was a decent individual and a nice brother, which sprang from the part of me that had been trained over the course of many years to feel guilty and obligated. However, there was another element that acknowledged the old pattern, the crisis, the appeal to family loyalty, and the expectation that I would put aside my limits because she required my assistance. This was the component that I was beginning to pay attention to. I did not instantly give a response. Rather, I stared at the email that was open in front of me, reflecting on my emotions. There was pity for her circumstances, compassion for the unborn kid, and a reflexive need to repair things. Nevertheless, I was also afflicted with an overwhelming sense of exhaustion, as well as the awareness that the cycle would never come to an end unless I was the one to put an end to it. I did not reply to the email before closing it. I continued on with my life and, after taking some time to consider the matter further, I tagged it as spam that evening. 5 years have passed since that time. I am able to see the city from my new flat. On 2 separate occasions, I have received a promotion in my place of employment. I go on trips whenever I choose to do so. There is no one who makes me feel bad for setting limits, or who takes money out of my bank accounts. Sometimes, the act of healing entails leaving something behind. There are times when the appropriate course of action is not to attempt to repair something that is broken, but rather to acknowledge the fact that certain things were not constructed correctly from the very beginning. I encountered my mother at the supermarket store just last week. Our gazes crossed over one another when we were standing in the vegetable aisle. She appeared to be older and fatigued. For a little time I experienced a feeling of something. Not quite grief, not quite remorse, but more like a reminder of what could have been if I had grown up in a different household. She came closer to me with caution, as if I were going to run away. I might have at some point in the past. Her gaze took in my appearance as she replied, "You look well." I gave a sign with my head. "I am well." She adjusted and readjusted the strap of her purse. My heart started beating faster when I heard, "Your father had a heart attack last month. The patterns of the past are difficult to break." I anticipated the guilt trip, the manipulation, and the assumption that I would rush back to help him. "Is he okay?" "He'll recover, but it was serious." With the checkbook in my possession, it did not arrive. Rather, she stated, "I've been considering everything that's been going on." I felt my throat constrict in an unexpected way as I said, "I should have stepped in. I should have protected you. You weren't supposed to do that, according to the script." "I do agree that you were supposed to do that." Tears began to form in her eyes. "I am not asking for you to forgive me or him. I just wanted you to know that I understand why you left," I said. I nodded, unable to trust myself to talk. Even after 5 years of being apart, her straightforward acknowledgement still has the ability to elicit a strong emotional response from me. She quietly told me, "Sophie named her child after you." I continued to gaze at the apples that I was holding in my hand, which I had suddenly become rather fascinated by due to their glossy crimson skin. "She is still residing with you," I continued. "However, she is attempting to make things work, as she is currently employed full-time and attending classes at night." I could only feel a sense of distant pity. Good for her, I thought to myself. My mother appeared as if she wanted to say something else, but she stopped herself. She extended her hand instead, paused for a moment, and then gently touched my arm. "I'm proud of you," she whispered. "I should have said that more." The words enveloped me like fallen leaves, too late to change the season, but still somehow meaningful. We never exchanged phone numbers or made plans to get together again. Some bridges that have been burned are beyond repair. However, as I watched her walk away, I felt a change within myself. It was not exactly forgiveness. I was not prepared for that. Perhaps I would never be prepared for that. But I did experience understanding. I came to the realization that we were all broken in our own unique ways, acting out patterns that had been set long before we had any opportunity to make our own choices. The truth of the matter is that the decision to cut off all communication was not the result of a single moment of anger. Rather, it was the culmination of thousands of small decisions that were made on a daily basis over the course of several years. These decisions included choosing not to make a phone call when I felt lonely, not reaching out to the other party during holidays, and not responding to the occasional messages that I received from them through mutual acquaintances. Every single decision came with its own grief, its own questioning, and its own internal struggle between what I had been taught to value and what I required in order to survive. There were times when I would wonder if it was too extreme to completely cut them off, if there might have been some middle ground, some careful distance rather than complete separation. However, if I did, I would be reminded of the offense of having my identity stolen, the betrayal I had when I discovered that my apartment had been destroyed, the several years during which I was only appreciated for the contributions I could make, and never for who I was as a person. And I would know with a conviction that went bone deep that not being in contact with anybody had been the only feasible option for me to take in order to heal. The nickname Golden Child had always been used by my father when he referred to Sophie. However, gold is soft and malleable, and it bends when pressure is applied to it. What he failed to realize was that the pressure he applied to me had transformed me into something stronger. In the same way that carbon is transformed into diamond when it is subjected to intense heat. The most important family is the one that you construct for yourself, the one that recognizes your value without requiring you to demonstrate it on a regular basis. I have discovered that I have a great deal of worth in places where I did not expect to find it. I have discovered that I have worth in the friends who appear without being invited, in colleagues who appreciate the contributions that I have made at my own company, which turns out to be superior to what I had previously thought it to be. Some people believe that blood is thicker than water. However, I have come to the conclusion that self-respect is thicker than the two of them combined. For anyone who is trapped in a family dynamic that saps your energy rather than providing you with sustenance, there is life on the other side. It is possible that it does not have the tidy conclusion that we have been led to believe we should anticipate. It is possible that it does not have reunions that are accompanied by tears or scenes of forgiveness that are full of drama. But it does have peace. Quiet mornings in which you do not wake up dreading calls to be made. Holidays that are spent exactly as you wish them to be spent. And the deep understanding that your worth was never established by people who were unable to recognize it. On occasion, the most affectionate thing you can do for yourself and others is to step back and allow the fragments to fall wherever they may. To this day, I still have dreams of making amends, of a family that is mended and complete. However, dreams are not the same as delusions. I am now aware that some injuries never fully close, and that is acceptable. Breaking free is not simply a matter of distance. It involves the process of deprogramming, which entails rejecting the notion that refusing something makes you egotistical, that having boundaries makes you unkind, and that selecting yourself over others makes you a terrible person. It is the most difficult task I have ever undertaken, and it is still in progress. But for the first time in my life, I feel like I am living on my own terms, not as a family disappointment, not as Sophie's sidekick, not as my father's ATM or my mother's peacemaker, but just as myself, complete and whole without requiring the validation or approval of anyone else. There is an unusual kind of sorrow that comes with this as well. I am mourning the family that I did not have and will never have. I searched for the unconditional love that I desired, but I never found it in the locations where it should have been most plentiful. However, there is also an enormous sense of freedom that comes from choosing my own path, defining what I consider to be my own value, and recognizing that although I did not choose the family I was born into, I have the power to decide how their influence will affect my future. And I make the decision to break the pattern in order to recover and flourish, not in spite of them, but because I have finally come to the realization that I am worthy of receiving more than what they were ready to provide. My parents mocked my construction job for years. Now I make more than both combined and just left them out of my will entirely. I am a 34-year-old male who owns a construction company in Phoenix that specializes in high-end backyard improvements, pools, outdoor kitchens, fire features and the like. Most people don't realize how hard it was to develop our firm. I began with only me, a used truck, and maxed out credit cards. I took whatever job that paid, including deck repairs, fence installation, and concrete patching. I worked 18-hour days, 7 days a week. My hands were permanently discolored with concrete dust and my back felt like it was tied together by duct tape. I slept in my truck on job sites during the week to save money on petrol. My bedroom was the cab of a 2008 Ford F-150 with 173,000 miles and a heater that only worked half the time. Winter evenings in Arizona aren't as pleasant as they seem when you're sleeping in a metal box. I lost my residence after a client failed to pay me for a $12,000 patio project. The guy complained the stonework didn't match the photo, despite the fact that the contract stated that natural stone varies in color. I learnt an expensive lesson about payment plans and deposits. A lawyer requested $5,000 simply to begin the procedure, which I did not have. I secured a small pool installation for a retired couple. Before then, my portfolio consisted of phone photos of decks and patios. They took a gamble since their grandson played on the same high school football team as I did. Family connections will only give you a chance. You still need to deliver. They recommended me to their neighbor, who then directed me to their son. Networking 101. I hired my first employee, Diego, who is still with us now. I spotted him working as a day worker outside of Home Depot. He had more talent than half of the contractors I'd met. He only needed documents and a chance. I personally paid for his certification classes. Best investment I've ever made. Supply chain chaos almost killed us. Lumber prices jumped overnight. I had to explain to clients why their quotes had suddenly spiked 40%. We lost half of our projects. I began chasing supplies as if it were a competitive sport, driving to suppliers at 4:30 a.m. to be first in line, asking for favors from guys I'd helped out. We traded materials with other contractors to ensure that neither of us failed. One week, I drove 1,200 miles throughout Arizona, Nevada, and New Mexico in search of specific tiles that a client insisted on. I slept about 20 hours that week. The client had no idea. To them, it was simply on time. A local news anchor hired us for a little assignment and then reported on it. Our Instagram followers tripled in a week. We began focusing solely on high-end projects. I passed down a $50,000 makeover in favor of a $120,000 build that would make us stand out. It was a hazardous decision, but playing it safe would not get me out of that truck. The renovation client cursed me out for passing and then came back later, offering to pay double my original quote. We now have 20 people, 3 crews working simultaneously, and a 3-month waiting list. Last quarter we completed $430,000 in projects with a 22% profit margin, our greatest quarter ever. By Phoenix contractor standards, that is the major leagues. I do not drive Lamborghini or post Rolexes. My flexibility is efficient. Every foreman has a company card with spending limits that I monitor in real time. We upgraded to Builder Trend. Client quotes, change orders, and project schedules all in one dashboard, reducing admin time by almost half. I fired a guy who showed up twice, smelling like vape juice and making excuses. I explained to the crew exactly why. If a guy can't show up on time, sober, and prepared, he's not only harming himself, he's jeopardizing all of our salaries. That is not drama. That is policy. Every dime in my account was acquired by working harder than anyone else. No subsidies, no family loans, no assistance. This is significant because my family continues to treat me as if I were a broke adolescent rather than someone who makes more than both parents together. I met Sophie, the client's female interior designer who was collaborating with us on the outdoor kitchen finishing, at one of those high-end projects. She's smart as hell, beautiful, and refreshingly forthright. None of this is playing hard to get crap. She contacted me about the granite samples and said, "You free on Friday? I know a place with decent tacos." She grew up with her grandma. Her parents left when she was 8. She attended design school while caring for her grandmother, who had dementia. The woman understands what real struggle looks like. When we first started dating, she would occasionally stop by job sites with coffee for the entire crew, not just me. That is how I knew she was different. She respected the job itself, not simply the outcome. Quick family breakdown. Dad, Frank, supervises a grocery chain district and earns roughly $85,000. Linda, the mother, is an elementary school administrator. Chelsea, her sister, claims to be a marketing consultant but hasn't worked with a genuine customer in years. She lives in my parents' basement and pretends to manage a business empire through her Instagram account. She left the room just as it was, complete with high school participation awards and boy band posters. She just added a ring light and a girl boss sign to her daily encouragement videos, which received 12 views. Growing up, the familial dynamic was very evident. Chelsea could not do wrong, and I could not do right. They termed her decision to drop out of college and travel to Europe brave self-discovery. When I worked construction over the summers to pay for business school, they referred to it as settling for manual labor. Dad would walk through our job sites, pointing out errors that were essentially incomplete work. He still does it. He went to the $300,000 lake house project we were working on and told the homeowner, right in front of him, that the slope on that deck looked odd. It was not. We were in the process of laser leveling the supports. The homeowner was hesitant until I showed him the designs and equipment. Mom wasn't doing any better. When I made the dean's list in business school for 3 semesters in a row, she commented, "If only you had applied yourself like this in high school." During college I worked 30 hours each week. In high school, I worked 15 hours a week while still participating in sports. Chelsea has been a disaster from day one. She proclaimed she was becoming plant-based as soon as Mom put the turkey on the table. She made a show of eating only side dishes and gagging anytime someone sliced into the meat. This is the same Chelsea who I saw devour a bacon cheeseburger the week before. When I commented, "Funny how your plant-based diet includes those leather boots you bought last week," she hurled cranberry sauce at me. I simply brushed it off and continued eating, while everyone pretended not to notice. Another time, at my cousin's wedding, she cornered me to explain how my company was harming the environment since concrete manufacture emits carbon dioxide. This comes from someone who takes 40-minute showers and keeps every light on in the home. I asked how much she enjoyed driving her SUV to the salon for her monthly blowout. She did not talk to me for months. The most calm months of my life. The hypocrisy is what bothers me. She preaches about sustainability but buys quick fashion every week. Talks about economic disparity but hasn't had an actual job in years. Posts about hustle culture while sleeping until noon every day. Sophie first met my family at Christmas last year. Chelsea arrived with a tiny dude wearing a turtleneck whom she introduced as her business partner. They spent the entire dinner discussing their new wellness platform, which promised to disrupt the mindfulness space. The software allegedly merged meditation, Bitcoin, and social media. The startup equivalent of putting random buzzwords into a blender. When I asked basic questions about revenue models or user acquisition costs, she became defensive and said, "Not everything is about money." I laughed and said, "It's hard to make a difference from Mom's basement." Dad nearly choked on his water. After dinner, Chelsea cornered Sophie in the kitchen while I was getting beverages. When I stepped in, Chelsea was saying something about Logan's building phase not lasting long, and Sophie needing to have a backup plan in case everything breaks apart. Sophie simply grinned and replied, "Actually, I have seen his novels. Maybe you should seek him for investment advice instead of whatever that turtleneck guy is selling you." Chelsea stormed off, and Sophie only smirked at me. That's my gal. I've always despised family reunions, but skipping them leads to weeks of texting about how important I am now. So I show up, put my head down, and count down the minutes until I can leave. I called Dad to inquire about plans. His tone was unusually nonchalant. "We're only doing a tiny bit this year, your mother wants to keep it low-key." I assumed it meant the normal meal at their house with flowers, nothing spectacular. Before hanging up he said, "Don't bother coming this time. There's no need for gifts either. Concentrate on your business. The trip from Phoenix is a pain in the ass." I had a fleeting sense of relief. Perhaps they finally realized I was building something legitimate, but years of family dynamics had trained me to be wary. I was having beers with my friend Derek at our usual hangout. We met in business school, and now he owns his own plumbing firm. We discussed supplier difficulties, employee management, and expansion strategies. You understand true business matters, not Instagram follower counts. Derek seemed doubtful when I told him about my father's call. "It sounds like a trap. If you don't show up, you've skipped Mother's Day. If you show, they'll think you're imposing." Sophie, who joined us after finishing with a customer, concurred. "Your sister has been posting all week about a major Mother's Day surprise." Sophie follows Chelsea on social media solely to gain intelligence. He compares it to keeping track of a highly unpredictable weather system. Derek's remarks stayed with me. I needed an irresistible gift. Then I remembered a conversation from years before. Mom had mentioned wanting to go to Skyrock, a posh wellness center near Sedona, stating it was her ideal getaway but too pricey. Dad laughed it off. "Maybe when we win the lottery." The next morning at work I looked up Skyrock Sedona. They offered a rejuvenation weekend package, 3 days and 2 nights of spa treatments, guided meditation, hiking, and all meals included. $3,800 for 2 persons. Years ago that amount would have covered my whole emergency savings. Nowadays, I can write a check without blinking. Business was good. We just completed a $230,000 backyard project for a tech executive, which came in under budget and ahead of schedule. The client has already referred to friends. I booked the package for the weekend following Mother's Day. I put down my parents' names and paid in full. They even arranged for champagne in their suite. For once, I was looking forward to a family gathering. I should have known better. Sophie and I drove 2 hours from Phoenix to Tucson on Sunday morning. I informed Diego that I would be unavailable for the entire day, which was unusual given that I generally take client calls 7 days a week. As soon as I turned onto my parents' street, I realized something was wrong. Both sides were lined with automobiles. I counted at least 15 vehicles, including my aunt's Range Rover and my uncle's ludicrous Hummer, which he purchased for off-roading but has never left a paved road in its life. I located a place 3 homes down and approached with the package holding the retreat reservations. Sophie stands by my side, looking stunning in a modest blue outfit. She squeezed my hand, sensing my stress. The front door was unlocked, so I let myself in and followed the noise to the garden. As I approached the patio doors, I heard my uncle say, "I thought Logan wasn't coming today." My father then continued, "He said he couldn't make it. Probably for the best. That douche would just bring down the mood with his contractor stories. At least we have Chelsea here, showing us her new presentation." I froze, hiding behind the doorframe. Sophie tightened her grip on my hand. The backyard was renovated. Tables were decked with extravagant flower arrangements, a "Happy Mother's Day Linda" banner, and catering personnel were preparing what appeared to be a gourmet dinner. At least 30 people congregated on the professionally groomed patio, which I had offered to remodel for free, but they declined since your sister's friend knows a guy. My cousin Jared noticed me first. "Holy Logan is here. Welcome, brother." Everyone's head turned. My father swiftly recovered with a dismissive, "Just joking around, son," before turning away to chat to my uncle as if I weren't even present. When I stepped into the backyard, the murmurs began instantly. Comments about showing up empty-handed, still driving the same truck, and how Chelsea recently received a large investment for her software. I heard statements such as, "Must not be doing as well as he claims," and "Still has dirt under his fingernails." The last one was correct. I'd been assisting a crew with some masonry the day before because one of the guys had called in ill. The proprietor continues to get his hands dirty as needed. Imagine that. I noticed Chelsea holding court near the bar, wearing enormous designer sunglasses and beckoning to a group of relatives. When she noticed me, she sneered and muttered something to our cousin, who laughed. Then her gaze fell on Sophie and rolled swiftly. I approached Mom at the main table. She frowned and inquired, "Why didn't you call about coming?" Then she stared at my hands. "You hadn't even brought anything for your mother. Wow. Very classy." She then turned to Sophie with a phony smile. "And you've brought your girlfriend. How nice. Did you know it's a family event?" Sophie only smiled back. "I'm his fiancée actually. We got engaged last month." She put up her left hand, displaying the diamond I'd proposed with after obtaining our largest deal yet. I guess our announcement got lost in the mail just like our invitation. I started reaching for the envelope in my pocket, but then I stopped. The setup was clear. This was not a last-minute gathering. This was a scheduled event that I was purposefully excluded from. Suddenly, Chelsea's business colleague Travis approached in another ludicrous turtleneck, despite the 85-degree heat. He looked like a Silicon Valley caricature playing dress-up, complete with those $400 minimalist sneakers that resemble hospital shoes. He made a sarcastic remark about my construction employment, asking whether I'd considered getting into technology because that's where the real money is. This is from a man who has yet to ship a viable product. I casually stated that we had just concluded a project for the company's CFO, who had rejected their app investment. "Hey, nice dude. Brad remarked something regarding your pitch deck's ridiculous projections. Small world." Travis's smug look faded, and Chelsea's gaze narrowed. I found an empty chair near my cousin Jared and approached it, Sophie at my side. Jared has always treated me well. He's a firefighter who despises BS as much as I do. Just as I was ready to sit, Chelsea emerged again, telling me that Travis's seat was available and that I could get a foldable chair from the garage. She looked at Sophie and said, "And I'm not sure where your +1 should sit. We did not arrange for additional." Jared stood up instantly. "I'll help you," he promised, following me inside. As we walked to the garage, he said quietly, "What the hell, man? Dad claimed it was intended to be small. Then Aunt Linda called and said it was all about catering. Every time I inquired who was coming, she changed the topic. Now I understand why." "Apparently I didn't make the cut," I explained, grabbing 2 metal folding seats. We returned to the yard and set up at the edge of the patio. Instead of returning to his table, Jared pulled his chair up next to me, a modest gesture that meant more than he imagined. Dad clinked his glass to get everyone's attention, stated that it was time to celebrate our beautiful Linda, and asked everyone to a catered lunch. After the obligatory song and photos, everybody gathered around the catering table. I was ready to join when Dad exclaimed, "Logan, we didn't include you in the caterer's head count. Just get a drink or something." The entire backyard became silent. I glanced at my father, trying to understand what he had just said. "What? Are you fooling me now?" The words came out naturally. He said, "Language, Logan." And yeah, I am not kidding. We spent $35 per person for this meal, and you were not on the list. I looked around, some uncomfortable expressions, others obviously enjoyed the show, and most people became quite interested in their drinks. Then Mom rose up and straightened her blouse. "We told Logan not to come today. You choose to disregard it. We can't simply make food appear." Jared spoke up. "Mrs. D. Logan, you are welcome to share my dish. I won't eat much anyway." Dad waved his hand dismissively. "No, he showed up uninvited. He can wait until everyone else has finished eating. If there is anything left." I asked, "Since when do I need an invitation to see my mother on Mother's Day? You want me to wait till everyone is done, as if I were a stray dog?" Sophie joined in. "So just to be clear, you are informing your own son that he will not be able to eat at your family gathering because you did not budget for him?" Chelsea stepped in and attacked. "No one asked for your opinion. You do not even belong here. So keep your mouth shut." I pointed to her. "Watch your freaking mouth. You don't get to talk to her like that." "Neither does Logan apparently," Sophie replied. She turned to me and said, "Babe, we can get lunch on the way home. This isn't worth it." That was it. Something inside me has just snapped. Not in a rage, but in a very plain way. Imagine staring at a difficult blueprint and suddenly seeing the solution. Just so you all know, I actually did bring something. I took out an envelope from my pocket and handed it to Jared. "Will you open it for me, bro?" He looked perplexed and gently opened the envelope. His eyes opened when he saw the reservation confirmation. At my request, he read it aloud. "Skyrock Wellness Retreat, Sedona. Premium rejuvenation package for 3 days, 2 nights in a mountain view suite. All meals, spa treatments, and activities included. Guests, Frank and Linda. Total value, $3,800, paid in full." "Holy Logan," he said. Everyone went silent. Several families started checking their phones to confirm the pricing. Aunt Marlene was now scanning through the Skyrock website, her eyes widening at the images. You could have heard a pin drop. Mom's jaw actually dropped open. Then they tried to backtrack. "Logan, we didn't know," Mom stated firmly. I said calmly, "Look. We were joking around," Dad explained. "You know how family is. Sit down, have some food." I remained standing. "That package includes couples massage, guided meditation, hikes, and a private dinner on the terrace overlooking the mountains. Everything Mom mentioned wanting to do someday when you had the money." Travis attempted to interject. "Linda, sometimes the universe works in mysterious ways. Perhaps this retreat could be." "Shut up, Travis," several people said at once. I turned back to Jared. "Those reservations are in my parents' names, but they can be transferred. I'd like you and Emily to have them." Jared was astonished, stating, "This was meant for my parents." His face stated, $3,800 more clearly than any words could. "Not anymore," I stated firmly. "My parents made it crystal clear today where I stand in this family." Dad stepped forward, his face flushed. "You can't do that. Those are our reservations." "Actually, they're my reservations. I paid for them, and I can give them to whoever I want." I turned to Jared. "You and Emily haven't had a vacation since the twins were born, right?" "Logan, please," Mom asked, her voice unexpectedly soft. "We were just surprised to see you. You know we love you. We can all talk about this later as a family." I laughed. "Yeah, sure." I promised Jared that I would call Skyrock the next day to replace the names on the reservation and send him the information. "You're making a scene," Chelsea muttered, staring around at the shocked relatives. "Number you all made the scene," I said. "I'm just finally walking off the set." As I approached the gate to leave Sophie by my side, my cousin Rachel cried out that she was joining us. Rachel is Chelsea's younger sister who relocated to Colorado for a developer position. When I told her she didn't have to leave, she protested, adding, "What they did was completely messed up. And she'd been witnessing this nonsense for years." Someone finally said it. She mumbled, grabbing her jacket. "I've been biting my tongue since 2015. Jared joined us and returned the envelope, telling us to keep it secure until tomorrow. He was already texting Emily about the unexpected intentions. To my amazement, my Uncle Ben, my father's younger brother who moved to Alaska and became the family's black sheep, was leaning against my truck. He'd flown down for the occasion, hoping that things had improved in the intervening 10 years. One look at the situation revealed that they hadn't. "Some things never change," he remarked, clapping my shoulder. I was about to make my exit too. "Mind if I join?" The five of us ended up at a local sports bar, ordering copious amounts of food and exchanging family war stories. After cutting off communication with his family, Uncle Ben established a profitable fishing charter business in Alaska. Rachel was crushing it as a software developer. Jared, while happy as a firefighter, was coping with his own family issues. Between bites of a burger that tasted 10 times better than any catered cuisine, Uncle Ben recounted how my parents had always prioritized image over truth. They'd rather have a prestigious daughter who is truly broke than a successful son in a blue-collar profession. "Your dad wanted to be an architect but couldn't hack the math," he told you. "So he manages grocery stores but pretends he's an executive. Your success reminds him of what he couldn't achieve." Rachel then stated that Chelsea has not had an actual client in over a year. She lived in their basement, making bogus business calls all day and occasionally talking to herself with no one on the other end. She drove for DoorDash 3 times per week, while telling everyone she was networking with executives. "Last month she asked me to pretend to be a Silicon Valley investor on a Zoom call," Rachel told me. "Wanted me to speak with a British accent for some reason. I refused, so she got mad and blocked me for a week. That explained why they were so disturbed by my achievement. Their golden child was failing, but I was excelling, but they refused to recognize it. It was easier to continue pretending, even when the evidence was right in front of them." Sophie added that Chelsea DM'd her last month asking if we needed a brand ambassador due to her strong social media presence. This came just a week after she ranted on Instagram Live about capitalism exploiting creatives. Sophie did not respond. Sophie's previous post received 8 likes, including one from an NFT bot proposing investment synergy. Sophie showed me the message, and I laughed. "You don't hire the person who lit your truck on fire just because you're low on gas." She did not respond. I guess she couldn't find the appropriate filter for that. I almost choked on my water. Chelsea, who had been bashing my business for years, secretly desired to work with me. The irony was simply wonderful. Jared recalled Emily's gallbladder operation while they were behind on their mortgage due to medical expenditures. Someone anonymously paid for it, and they've always wondered who it was. I attempted to change the subject, but Jared persisted. Finally I shrugged and added, "You guys fed us every night for a week after I hurt my ankle on the construction site." Emily supervised my dog as I flew to the supplier conference. "What goes around comes around, man." Jared explained, "And today, they wouldn't even let you eat." We discussed my next steps, full cut-off. Uncle Ben agreed, claiming it was the best decision he'd ever made. "The first year is tough, but after that comes freedom," he told me. "They will try everything. Guilt trips, health concerns, and financial emergencies. Stay strong. Your true family is seated around this table." Rachel invited Sophie and me to her housewarming party in Denver, promising to introduce us to individuals who aren't complete narcissists. "Plus, we can go mountain biking if you're into that," she told me. "There's more to life than family drama." For the first time that day, I felt a sense of tranquility. The fallout was immediate. By the time we returned to Phoenix that night, I had 17 missed calls and 32 text messages. I ignored them all and slept the best sleep I'd had in years. First thing Monday morning, I phoned Emma, my attorney. We met when I needed contracts made for my business, and she has since handled a number of legal concerns. I asked her to add a nuclear option to my will and company succession plan, a no-blood clause that explicitly barred my parents and sister from any inheritance or business stake, regardless of circumstances. When she mentioned that this was quite definitive, I simply said, "Recent events have clarified my priorities." "Families are complicated," she added, not asking for specifics. "This is why I like Emma. No needless questions, simply efficient solutions." I signed the papers. My inheritance would be divided among reliable employees such as Diego, a scholarship fund for trade school students, and close relatives such as Jared, Rachel, and Uncle Ben. My parents and Chelsea were specifically excluded, with text suggesting that any attempt to contest would result in a penalty provision directing monies to charities they disliked. Emma proposed environmental concerns, recognizing my sister's duplicity over her carbon footprint. Next, I called Skyrock to transfer the reservation to Jared and Emily. Then I banned my parents' and Chelsea's numbers and returned to work. Business was thriving. We received a contract to create a unique pool and outdoor kitchen for a local news anchor. In the same week, I promoted Diego to operations director and offered him a 15% raise. He had earned it by stepping up during the commotion and keeping jobs on track while I dealt with personal issues. That is what real loyalty looks like. They arrived at my office without an appointment. Laura, our receptionist, buzzed me. "Frank, Linda, and Chelsea are here to see you. There is no appointment. They say it's an essential family business." I told her to return them. You might as well rip off the bandage. When they walked in, they didn't resemble the confident people from Mother's Day. Mom seemed fatigued. Dad's posture was sagging, and even Chelsea was untidy. The fancy dress was gone, replaced by what appeared to be regular business casual apparel. I realized I was dressing up for a loan request. Dad nervously complimented my workplace space as he looked about at the modern design with floor-to-ceiling windows that view downtown. "Really professional setup," he exclaimed, as if shocked. "Are those awards real?" He pointed to the wall of industry honor. "No, father. I acquired bogus prizes to dazzle clients," I explained dryly. "What do you want?" "Is that how you greet your family?" Mom asked. "We haven't heard from you in weeks." I cut right to the chase and asked what they wanted. Mom claimed they were concerned about me, but I quickly pointed it out. They came because they wanted something. Chelsea mentioned the familial drama. Aunt Karen wasn't speaking with Dad. Rachel had blocked Mom online, and Uncle Ben had sent everyone an email describing them as hazardous. I grinned and responded, "That sounds like your problem, not mine." Dad tried an apology, describing their behavior as inappropriate. I stated that telling someone they can't eat at a family gathering or calling them a loser in front of everyone is completely improper. "That was a momentary lapse in judgment," he remarked, as if he were describing failing to signal a lane change. After considerable back and forth, Dad finally revealed that they needed approximately $25,000 owing to financial troubles. That was the true purpose for their visit, not an apology, but a financial request. The pieces snapped into place instantly. When I asked what the money was for, they paused before Dad revealed that it was for Chelsea's wellness app. They had invested their savings as seed money, and the developer required an additional $25,000 to complete the platform. I smiled and rightly anticipated that the first $30,000 was spent on a fancy logo, professional Instagram picture sessions, and gold foil business cards rather than genuine software development. Let me guess. Travis's relative works part-time as a developer for WordPress. I asked. Chelsea's look verified that without using words. Amateurs. There are several of them. I stated that Travis was deceiving them and that they had mortgaged their retirement to pay Chelsea's vanity project without asking a single probing inquiry. I could have introduced you to legitimate developers who would have built a working prototype for $5,000 before you committed another dime, I told you. But you never asked for my expertise, because to you, I'm just the guy who plays with dirt for a living. Hell, for $25,000, I could have hired 2 junior devs and a UI guy off Upwork to build a working MVP with integrated analytics and a feedback loop. Instead, they blew it on logo design, gold foil cards, and paid a vegan TikTok girl to promote it. She removed the video after 36 hours. There are 0 users, no feedback, no product. But at the very least, the app had a vibe. When Mom inquired if I wouldn't help them, I told her that if they had treated me with basic decency, I would have helped without hesitation. I had helped staff during difficult times. I paid for Diego's son's emergency operation without a second thought. But those were the very last individuals I would give money to. It's not about the money, I clarified. I made more than your loan amount last month in profit. It's about the pattern of behavior that led us here. Mom murmured something about family, which I firmly corrected. We share DNA, but that's not the same thing as family. I stood up and remarked that Jared and Emily had a great time at Skyrock. I showed them the images they had supplied, including one of them raising glasses on the Mountain View terrace, which should have been my parents'. Dad became enraged, exclaiming, "That's it? Years of raising you and you just cut us off? You raised me to be self-sufficient, I told you. Congratulations, it worked." Chelsea tried one more time, claiming she had a job offer in Chicago and required $3,000 for an apartment security deposit. I merely complimented her and advised her to contact a bank for a loan. Banks require income verification, she mumbled. So do I said. Mom made one final plea, claiming they recognized they had made a mistake and wanted a second chance. I offered to email them the name of a financial expert who helps people restructure debt and promised to pay for the initial appointment. That was it. Dad complained that wasn't enough. I said calmly, "It was more than you deserved." I then requested them to leave. If you ever want a real relationship based on mutual respect, rather than what I can do for you, the door remains open, I told you. But it'll be on entirely new terms. Diego checked on me after they had departed. I informed him I was doing better than excellent and inquired on his house hunting progress. When he brought up the challenging market, I offered a friends and family discount on renovations to help make a fixer-upper more reasonable. "Are you sure you want to mix business with friendship?" the man inquired. "You're not a friend," I responded. "You're family." Months have passed. My parents occasionally attempt to contact me through other relatives, but I have made my attitude plain. Instead of the family I was born into, I've created something better. A community of people who genuinely value one another. Last weekend I flew to Denver to celebrate Rachel's housewarming. Uncle Ben traveled down from Alaska. Jared and Emily drove up from Tucson. Sophie and I completed our wedding plans while we were there. The event will take place next month at a site overlooking Camelback Mountain. We have already determined that my parents and sister will not be invited. My company recently broke ground on our most ambitious project yet, a total backyard remodel for a former NFL player that will be featured in a home magazine. We're opening a second site next quarter, and I'm bringing on Diego as a junior partner. He almost broke down when I informed him. He said he never anticipated operating a business in America when he crossed the border a decade ago. As for my parents and Chelsea, I learned via Jared that Dad's wellness app investment has been depleted. The developer vanished with the money. Chelsea's job offer inexplicably fell through. They are informing everyone that I abandoned the family in their time of need. But here's the thing. For the first time in my life, I don't care what others say about me. I'm too busy making something genuine, which it turns out, is pretty important. Sophie and I will marry next weekend after the dust has settled. We're keeping it small, just for those who genuinely support us. Uncle Ben is officiating. Diego is my best man. Rachel is helping to keep everything in order. Jared and Emily are bringing the twins. There's no drama, no passive-aggressive remarks. Nobody told me I couldn't eat the food at my own wedding. We even had designated seats. Sophie's friend created the calligraphy cards. When one of Jared's cousins playfully inquired if Chelsea had a seat, I simply smiled and answered. Didn't budget for extras. Uncle Ben almost snorted his drink. The table cracked. It seemed like justice, but quiet. We chose to celebrate something authentic with only our family. My cousin lied that I assaulted her. After 9 years of silence, she admitted it was because I missed her birthday. Now, my family wants me back. 9 years ago, my entire family blocked me after my cousin accused me of snatching her as a child. I was 22 years old and playing video games with pals when my mother committed the family's cardinal sin. She contacted me again after I didn't return her initial call. Calling twice in my family indicated that this was extremely urgent. When I answered the phone, I heard turmoil and screaming before she went into another room. She sobbed and asked if I had anything to say about Emily. I said no. Emily was my younger cousin and I hadn't seen her in years. That's when Mom shouted, as Emily did when she was 9 and I was 16. I entered my room when she was playing and repeatedly assaulted her. She provided extensive details of everything. I could not breathe. I kept claiming it wasn't true, but my mother started shouting, "Did you do this?" repeatedly. I screamed no back every time, but she didn't listen. The call ended with both parents on speaker indicating they did not want to see me again. My sisters texted me, calling me horrible, and then blocked me. I attempted to call everyone, but they all blocked me immediately. My father sent me a final SMS instructing me to stop contacting them. The following year ruined me. Every day, I waited for the police to arrest me. I stopped eating and failed my job interviews. I began drinking heavily and taking oxy. I became violent, but I lived alone, so I simply ruined my place. When neighbors contacted the cops to report me breaking glasses, I assured them I had dropped it. I spent evenings contemplating how to hurt Emily while making it look like an accident. Sometimes I dreamed about doing what she accused me of. Worse, I was consumed by the darkest thoughts imaginable. In late 2015, I was finally able to get a job that provided structure. I gradually got sober and bought a house last year. I've been taking antidepressants, which dull my negative thoughts. I tried dating twice, but explaining why I don't have a family drives women away. My therapist is the only woman I really speak with. Last week my mother texted unexpectedly. First contact in 9 years. She claimed they missed me and told me about my sisters having children. Then, yesterday, another text delivered the bombshell. Emily was downplaying what occurred to her at a family event last month when the subject was raised. My mother became skeptical and grilled her about it, and she eventually claimed that nothing happened and that she had probably dreamed it. The family exploded. My mother and father walked out back and simply started crying. My parents informed me they are disgusted and angry with her. They told everyone the truth and now want me back in their lives. I have not reacted to them, however. Old memories are pouring back, and I am shivering with wrath. Part of me wants to systematically end each of their lives, beginning with Emily. Make them feel just a fraction of what I felt. This morning, Emily texted me immediately. 9 years of stillness, and she texts as if nothing happened. She said she knows I despise her, but she needs to tell me the truth. It wasn't a dream or confusion. When she was 15, her mother discovered her sneaking out to see her boyfriend. She was going to be grounded for the entire summer and miss camp. So she said that she was behaving out due to past trauma. When pressed for details, she cooked up a story about me. She chose me because I was far away at university and rarely around. She assumed I'd deny it, and everyone would move on. She never imagined they'd cut me off altogether. She attempted to return it a few days later, but they claimed she was simply protecting me. The falsehood became out of control, and she was too terrified to admit it. She has been in treatment for years, struggling with guilt. She concluded with, "I'm so sorry, and I know you'll never forgive me, but I wanted you to know it was never about you. I've screenshotted everything and am now debating how to use it. My therapist is on vacation for 3 weeks. The rage is devouring me. I've been sober for 4 years, yet all I want is to become blackout drunk and show up at their door. I know exactly how I'll handle this. It's time for them to comprehend the repercussions." I sat in my kitchen at 3 a.m. The laptop is open, with Emily's messages on the screen. My palms trembled as I reread her confession. 9 years. 9 years of my life were ruined because she did not want to miss summer camp. The kitchen light flickered overhead, throwing shadows that mirrored the gloom within me. Across town, Emily lay awake in bed, clutching her phone. She checked it obsessively, startled at any notification sound. Her engagement ring reflected the moonlight as she checked our messaging thread for the 100th time. Still no reaction from me. She bit her lip, typed another message, deleted it, and typed another. I pushed myself to dismiss the laptop and get up. My body moved on autopilot, producing coffee that I wouldn't consume. The wrath had to go somewhere. I grabbed my car keys. At 6 a.m., I parked outside Emily's apartment complex. The morning was cold and wet from the overnight rain. I sat in my car, engine turned off, simply waiting. I was familiar with her routine thanks to years of spying on social media. She always ran at 6:15 p.m., exactly on time. Emily emerged from the building wearing her jogging gear. She stretched near the entryway, earbuds in, fully unaware. Then she turned toward the parking lot, and our gazes connected. She froze in mid-stretch. Her running sneakers creaked against the damp pavement as she carefully backed away. I did not move or blink, just stared at her through the glass. Her face turned white. She lurched backwards, almost tripping over the sidewalk, before turning and running back inside. My phone vibrated immediately. Emily's name popped up on the screen as text. "Please say anything. Anything." I ignored it and launched LinkedIn from my phone. Her profile indicated that she worked as a senior account manager for a local marketing firm. The irony was not lost on me. She made a career out of writing tales, while I lost everything due to her falsehoods. Her engagement announcement from last month glared back at me. Tom Williams, an investment banker. Clean-cut man with a great smile. Emily sent another SMS. "I know you're reading them. I can view the receipts." My telephone rang. Marcus Street. I had entirely forgotten about our morning coffee meeting. It was the first time I had missed it in 2 years. I let it go to voicemail. I took screenshots of Emily's confession from last night and her LinkedIn page. Then I opened the text conversation with my mother. Her texts imploring me to return went unanswered. My thumb hesitated on the attachment button. One screenshot with no context. Let her work things out. My phone's battery indicator flashed 6%. The low battery indicator increased the urgency of my decision. I pressed send. The response was quick. "Mom called." I declined. She called again and again. By the time I began driving to work, she had called 47 times in 10 minutes. My phone rang continually in the passenger seat, the screen repeatedly lighting up with Mom. I drove into the warehouse parking lot, and my stomach fell. Emily's white Honda sat in visitor parking. What the art was she doing at my work? Inside, I noticed her through the office window, chatting animatedly with my boss. She dabbed her eyes with a tissue. My employer, Bill, was wearing the same concerned expression he wore when someone's grandmother died. I clocked in and attempted to stroll past the office, but Bill recognized me and waved me inside. Emily would not look at me. Bill drew me aside near the water cooler. His voice was low and empathetic. "Hello. I am sorry to hear about the death in the family." Emily explained everything. "Take the time you need." My voice remained controlled and even. "There were no deaths. She is lying." The security camera's red light flashed overhead, filming everything. Bill's expression shifted from sympathy to confusion. He exchanged glances with Emily and me. Emily eventually looked at me, wide-eyed and begging. "I was just concerned about you. You were not returning anyone's calls." I went away silently, heading to my station. Bill followed me, evidently uneasy, but I just resumed my shift inventory as if nothing had occurred. Emily soon departed after that. During my first break, my phone was flooded with Facebook notifications. Emily had messaged my colleagues claiming she was concerned about my mental health. She asked them to check on me. Said I had been acting strangely, and the family was concerned. Jake from shipping approached me on the loading dock. "Hey, your cousin stopped by. She looked quite concerned about you." "What a caring cousin. You okay?" My jaw clenched so fiercely that I felt my teeth would crack, but I simply nodded and continued working. At lunchtime I sat in my car and checked Facebook. I hadn't viewed Emily's profile in months. Her posts from 2015 were still visible. There it was, her survivor post from immediately following the accusation. Hundreds of encouraging responses, with people calling her brave and giving prayers. One comment from 3 weeks ago attracted my attention. Tom Williams writes on being proud of her strength. My phone vibrated. Unknown number. I almost disregarded it, but then I saw the preview. "This is Tom Williams. I know the truth now. We need to talk." Before I could digest that, another SMS came in. "Dad. This time your mother is inconsolable. Emily claims you've been stalking her for months. We are considering a restraining order." I wanted to throw my phone through the windshield. Instead, I reopened our old family group chat from before things went to crap. I scrolled back years. Emily had asked me for help with her mathematics homework, referred to me as her favorite cousin when I visited from college, and her last communication to me before the accusation requested that I send her a keepsake from university. My telephone rang. Human Resources Department. I let it go to voicemail and listened right away. "This is Janet from Human Resources. We received a worrisome communication about you from a family member. We must organize an obligatory meeting for tomorrow morning to discuss some allegations regarding your stability and past. Please call me back and confirm." I returned inside and my boss, Mike, called me aside. "Hi, just a heads up. That woman who was here before sent some quite serious emails to HR. She appeared really convincing. Someone mentioned something about violence against women. I just wanted you to know what you're getting into tomorrow." After work, I drove to my parents' neighborhood. Not at their house. I wasn't prepared for that. However, Mrs. Chen's house is next door. She has always been kind to me. Even sent a card stating that she did not believe the charges. Mrs. Chen invited me for tea. Her hands shook while she poured. I couldn't determine whether it was due to age or worry. "Your parents told everyone you were getting help with your problem," she replied quietly. "But I never thought you had a problem to begin with." That evening, I made a temporary email account using the library computer. I included the screenshots of Emily's confession and forwarded them to Tom Williams's work email address, which I discovered on his company website. Then I quickly deleted the account. At 11 p.m., I couldn't stop myself. I drove by Emily's apartment building. Tom's BMW sat in visitor parking. Even from the street, I could hear screaming from her second-floor unit. The window banged shut. My phone lit up with a text from Emily. "I am alerting everyone that you doctored those screenshots." I was still sitting in my car, contemplating everything, when headlights appeared behind me. I tensed, braced for a confrontation, but it was Lucy, my sister Lucy. She came out of her car and even under the streetlight I could see her mascara was smudged. She knocked on the window. I rolled it down without saying anything. "Mom showed me the screenshot," Lucy explained, her voice trembling. I've been thinking about that time Emily lied about me stealing her iPad. Remember? She was so convincing. She even knew when and how I did it. A week later we discovered it under her bed. She looked at my passenger seat and noticed my packed workout bag beside the door. Were you planning on going somewhere? I shook my head just to be prepared. Lucy got into the passenger seat without asking. She did this all the time as a teen, false illness claims before exams, and pretended ailments before family gatherings she didn't want to attend. Remember when she said she got appendicitis just before Grandpa's 80th birthday? The hospital discovered nothing wrong. My phone vibrated. It's Tom Williams again. She admitted this to me. I am done. She is unaware that I am talking to you. I showed Lucy the text. She grabbed my phone and typed a response before I could stop her. Can you videotape her if she confesses again? Tom responded immediately. I am already thinking the same thing. She's been texting me all night. She mentioned having proof that you stalked her. Lucy returned my phone. This will grow uglier before it gets better. The next morning, Emily posted a black square with white lettering on Instagram about toxic family members attempting to rewrite history. The hashtags made me nauseous. Number sign survivor. Numbers represent my truth. A journey of healing through the number signs. Within an hour, 3 cousins texted me to see if the post was about me. Someone noted that Emily had been acting strangely lately at family gatherings. I was walking into work when I received another text from Tom. I'll meet you at the diner on 5th Street at noon. I have something you should hear. I arrived at the diner early and chose a booth in the back corner. My hands were curled around a coffee cup I hadn't intended to drink. Catherine, the waiter, recognized me from previous trips and offered me a sympathetic nod. She'd seen me here several mornings after a difficult night. Tom Williams strolled in at exactly noon. He looked fatigued, his typically flawless banker looks unkempt, and the heavy circles under his eyes indicated that he hadn't slept. He sat into the booth across from me and took out his phone. He gave me a voice recording software with dozens of files from the previous 2 nights. He told me that after getting my email, he confronted Emily. She had broken down, revealed everything, and then attempted to spin fresh versions of the story. He had taped everything. He played one recording of Emily practicing several explanations. In one version, she said I had lately harassed her. In another, she claimed I had threatened her family. Each iteration became more complicated and harmful. The manipulation was methodical and intentional. Tom handed me a folder containing printed emails between Emily and her best friend Chloe. They planned contingency measures in case the truth got out. Emily had prepared comprehensive plans to retain her victim status, including allegations of recent stalking and threats. Before I could react, the dining door chimed. Emily entered the room, inspecting it frantically. Catherine stepped in her path and declared unequivocally that she would not serve liars. Emily's face reddened as the other customers turned to stare. She recognized us and attempted to approach, but Catherine forcibly stopped her. Emily swiftly fled, but not before giving me a look of utter loathing. My phone vibrated with a text from my sister, Bella. Lucy had brought her to my place in the morning. She wanted to talk. I met them at home after leaving the diner. Bella started crying before she even got inside. She took out a journal from 2015 and handed it to me, her hands shaking. She documented Emily's behavior patterns throughout their adolescent years, lying about teachers, staging panic attacks, and manipulating family members for attention. Entry after entry demonstrated an obvious pattern of fraud. Bella claimed she felt Emily was lying about me but was too terrified to speak up. The family's reaction had been harsh and swift. She'd convinced herself she was incorrect. That afternoon I received a Facebook message from Rachel, Emily's college roommate. She had seen Emily's Instagram post and understood the manipulative tactics. She had her own proof, images of Emily gloating about harming someone who had wronged her. The mails were from our sophomore year in college. Emily had made extensive preparations to wreck someone's life if they ever disregarded her. A single message made my blood run cold. My cousin learned to not ignore me. Despite my wrath, I responded to Rachel thoughtfully and professionally. She volunteered to send all she owned. Within an hour, I had chat logs that revealed Emily's history of false charges, including one against a professor who had given her a low grade. Meanwhile, I had to address the HR complaint. I sent a calm answer, copying a lawyer acquaintance who had promised to help. I addressed the matter truthfully, included evidence of Emily's confession, and remained completely professional. My coworkers observed my calm demeanor and began asking questions. Word immediately traveled around the warehouse about what was going on. Emily's desperation was increasing. Tom informed me that she had been placed on administrative leave by her marketing agency after he disclosed information about her history of false charges. Their wedding, which was scheduled for 3 weeks away, was clearly cancelled. She was losing control. That evening, I was in the grocery store when I sensed someone observing me. I turned to face my mother at the end of the aisle. Her hands shook as she neared. She apologized quietly, tears running down her cheeks. She was wearing the jewelry I gave her on her 50th birthday. Before we could continue talking, Emily appeared from the next aisle. She had been following my mother. Emily immediately began shouting loudly about how I was manipulating everyone and doctoring evidence. Other consumers started staring. I remained mute, recalling the surveillance cameras overhead. My mother looked between us, her face falling as she noticed Emily's mask slip. Emily then took an unexpected action. She offered me $50,000 from her trust fund to leave town and start over elsewhere. She shouted it loudly enough for everyone to hear, presenting it as kind compensation for a misunderstanding. I took out my phone and began recording, making certain she repeated the offer. She did, and all I had to do was sign a statement claiming the screenshots were bogus. That night I received an SMS from Emily's mother, Aunt Linda. She wanted to talk. Something wasn't adding up in Emily's ever-changing story. We decided to meet at a neutral location the next day. Tom continues to be an invaluable ally. He disclosed that Emily had been in therapy since college for compulsive lying and manipulation. During a previous incident involving false claims against a teaching assistant, her treatment notes were subpoenaed. He had duplicates. The pattern was clear. I recognized that only my parents and Emily's parents in the extended family still trusted her completely. Everyone others began to question the tale. The family group chat, which had been silent for years, suddenly became active with discussions. Rachel sent additional evidence. A week ago, chat logs revealed Emily's plan B. If caught lying, she claimed mental illness. She had studied symptoms and prepared stories about dissociation and false recollections. The calculations were terrifying. Marcus proved to be a good buddy when Emily showed up at my office again. She waited until she saw me approaching the loading dock. Marcus physically positioned himself between us, preventing her from entering. He phoned security while keeping his position. He informed her he recognized a predator when he saw one, and it was not me. She fled before security arrived, but not before numerous co-workers noticed her harassing behavior. That night, Marcus told his own story. He had been wrongly implicated by a family member years before. He noticed the patterns and manipulating strategies. We spent hours devising a strategy to discreetly reveal Emily without harming actual survivors or making it about vengeance. Tom recommended uploading everything online, but I declined. This was not about public shaming. It was about the truth and keeping people safe from her manipulation. We decided to handle everything secretly, documenting each conversation for security but not weaponizing social media. 2 days later, Emily approached me at a gas station. I was filling up when she appeared next to my car. She leaned up close, saying that no one would believe screenshots couldn't be manipulated. My credibility was pitted against hers, and she was viewed as the victim by everyone. I said nothing, simply grinned slightly and pointed to the surveillance camera right overhead. Her face turned pallid. Tom collated his recordings and prepared a notarized affidavit detailing their chats. He backed up everything in 3 different locations and handed me copies. Emily's confession was now clearly documented across various sources. The dominoes started falling faster. Emily's best friend Chloe banned her from everything once Tom revealed the truth to her. She texted me an apology, claiming she had always suspected something was wrong but had decided to believe her buddy. More family members began coming out, offering their own doubts and observations throughout the years. Lucy set up a group chat with family members who believed me. She shared Bella's journal entries. The extended family group chat was rife with conversation. Sides formed, but the momentum shifted toward the truth. Emily's followers fell silent one by one as evidence piled up. I set up an emergency session with my therapist's colleague. She assisted me in formulating responses that would protect my sobriety while seeking justice. We focused on ways to handle disputes without allowing anger to take over. The task was arduous but vital. Everything came to a head when Emily arrived at my residence at 2 a.m., knocking on the door. She screamed that I had wrecked everything, including her life. I dialed Marcus and Tom immediately. They arrived within minutes to observe and document her conduct. Emily's unstable behavior worsened. She kicked my door, flung a rock at the window, and yelled threats. My elderly neighbor came out and told her that Emily had acted like this before. Several other neighbors watched from their windows. Marcus videotaped everything as Tom contacted the cops. When authorities arrived, Emily attempted to claim that I had invited her over and then locked her out. However, with many witnesses and her obvious intoxication, her explanation fell apart. The officers took everyone's statements and encouraged me to file a restraining order. Emily's company called Tom the next morning to advise him that, following an internal inquiry, they had placed her on permanent leave. Her previous false charges, along with the current scenario, rendered her a liability. Word had spread throughout their professional network. Mrs. Chen disclosed something surprising. In 2019, she overheard Emily's parents talking about checking in on me to see if I'd changed. She had doorbell camera footage of them sitting in their car outside my house, watching. They'd known where I was for years but had decided to keep the arrangement. I ensured Tom received support from his friend circle while keeping limits to avoid targeting Emily vindictively. I suggested that he attend a support group for manipulative partners. He accepted my offer and found it beneficial. Both of my sisters have fully reconciled with me. We began having weekly dinners to share 9 years of missing memories. They presented me to their children, my nieces and nephews, whom I had never met. The pain of missed time was great, but the joy of reconnecting helped to balance it. Family members who had always believed me began to reach out, apologizing for not speaking up. They were also frightened of being cast out. Fear of exclusion had dominated the familial dynamic, which Emily had expertly weaponized. Emily attempted one more deception. She wrote a group text stating I was turning everyone against her and that she was the true victim, being gaslighted by a master manipulator. However, her continuously changing story weakened her trustworthiness. Family members began pointing out irregularities. Emily came up at a family dinner that she had not been invited to. When faced with her lies, she eventually removed her mask completely. She screamed that I deserved it for neglecting her, being everyone's favorite, and leading the life she desired. The admission was witnessed by 12 family members. My father witnessed Emily's true nature when she threatened to destroy me again. His face became white as realization dawned. The man who sent me that final SMS 9 years ago now realized the truth. He broke down entirely. Former family friends who had distanced themselves began inviting me to parties. Emily was no longer welcome after her actions became public. The social isolation she had imposed on me was now her reality. The HR inquiry at my workplace determined that Emily's charges were unjustified and looked to be retaliatory. Her complaint has been officially dismissed. My supervisor apologized for originally believing her, stating she had been really convincing. I did not blame him. She had deceived an entire family for 9 years. A family reunion was planned for the following month. Grandma, who is now 94 and in poor health, wanted everyone to attend what could be her last gathering. This became a deadline of sorts. The family needed to decide how to handle Emily's presence. Emily's ex-boyfriend from college contacted her, revealing further evidence. She falsely accused him of theft after he broke up with her. He had a police report that proved his innocence. The trend of bogus charges dated back further than anyone realized. I created a timeline of Emily's lies, including dates, witnesses, and proof. The pattern indicated a consistent escalation over time. What began as little lies for attention had escalated into life-ending false allegations. The family couldn't ignore the evidence. At a family meeting, I explained everything calmly, but Emily became increasingly upset. She contradicted herself several times, changed her tale, and finally began yelling at everyone. Her parents tried to calm her down, but she also turned on them. Mom finally admitted she knew something was wrong, but was too surprised to think clearly. Emily's initial accusation was so detailed and emotional that it overruled her thinking. She had chosen to believe her niece over her son, and the guilt was consuming her. A little family gathering was placed without Emily. It was the first time in 9 years that I had been welcomed back. I sat in my usual seat at the dinner table. Everyone avoided discussing the lost years, but the void where those memories should have been was palpable. Emily made one final desperate play. She stated she was getting panic attacks and heart palpitations due to the stress. She required family support or something horrible would happen, but the family noticed a pattern. Lucy pointed out that Emily had used the same exact techniques in high school to dodge consequences. Then there was another blow to Emily's trustworthiness. Her employer realized she had lied on her application about holding a master's degree that she had never received. The research into her background discovered several deceptions. She was formally terminated. My ties with my siblings were completely repaired. We had dinners together, told stories, and tried to fill in the 9-year gap. The sadness of lost time would never completely heal, but we were creating something new. Throughout this, I remained sober. Marcus checked on me every day. My therapist's colleague provided invaluable assistance. The need to drink was present, especially during the most difficult conflicts. But I now have tools that I did not have 9 years ago. Emily's world was falling, but it was entirely of her own doing. Each lie she used to cover previous lies had resulted in a house of cards. Everything was now tumbling down. The family she had deceived for nearly a decade had finally realized the truth. I sat in my car outside my childhood house one evening, trying to decide whether or not to go inside. The house looked the same, but everything had changed. 9 years of estrangement could hardly be reversed overnight. But for the first time since that phone call while gaming with friends, I felt hopeful that recovery was possible. The family meeting was set for that evening at Grandma's place. When I arrived, automobiles were already crowding the driveway. Through the window, I noticed family members gathered in the living room, their faces anxious. Emily's automobile hadn't arrived yet. Inside, the air was thick with expectancy. My aunts and uncles sat in the exact seats they had taken 9 years before when they first heard Emily's accusation. The irony was not lost on me. Lucy touched my shoulder as I took a seat. Emily arrived 20 minutes later with her parents. She looked awful. She had unclean hair, wrinkled clothes, and black circles under her eyes. Her confident demeanor had crumbled utterly. She attempted to sit in her normal seat, but Grandma pointed to a chair in the middle of the room. Emily's face reddened when she realized she'd be facing everyone. I presented the history systematically, with each falsehood documented and each pattern revealed. Family members sent around Bella's journal, Tom's notarized statement, and Rachel's screenshots. Emily's parents became paler with each piece of evidence. Her mother's hands shook as she read her daughter's own words about punishing those who had crossed her. Emily's attempts to interrupt were quickly shut down when she claimed the evidence was manufactured. Tom played a recording of her confession. Her speech filled the room, confessing everything and plotting fresh lies. Several family members gasped. One of the aunts left the room in tears. The breaking moment came when Grandma spoke. Her voice, which generally grew weaker with age, sounded clear and strong. She talked of witnessing the family fall apart and remaining mute when she had doubts. She looked directly at Emily, telling her that her falsehoods had ruined something priceless. Emily snapped. She leaped up, yelling that I was everyone's favorite, that no one acknowledged her, and that I deserved what I got for ignoring her at family gatherings. The mask didn't simply slip. It shattered entirely. She admits to planning the lie because I had missed her birthday celebration while attending university. 9 years of anguish over a missed birthday. Aunt Linda abruptly stood up, her face blanched. She left the room and returned a few minutes later, carrying an antique diary with a flowered cover. Her hands trembled as she flipped through the pages. She had discovered it while packing Emily's old room for refurbishment. The writings were devastating, with detailed plans to make me suffer for missing her birthday and not paying enough attention. One entry from 2 weeks before the accusation detailed exactly what she said I did. Emily lunged at the diary, but her father grabbed her arm. He seized the diary and read it aloud, his voice breaking. The premeditation was evident. Emily had written about choosing me precisely since I was so far away at university, and about sexual assault because it guaranteed I'd be entirely cut off. She'd even practiced telling her folks. The room erupted. Family members who had been suppressing their fury eventually let loose. They confronted Emily about her previous lies throughout the years. Fake diseases, fraudulent charges against teachers, and persuasion techniques. The pattern dated back to childhood. Emily's parents sat still, watching their daughter's life of deception unfold. Grandma made the decision that reshaped our family. She stood with her cane for support and declared Emily unwanted at any family reunion until she received severe mental care and made genuine apologies to everyone she had offended. The family matriarch has spoken. Nobody challenged her. Emily's reaction was quick and spiteful. She took out her phone and showed me a photo of her holding a can of spray paint over my car. She threatened that if I did not publicly forgive her and reveal that the screenshots were bogus, she would make sure everyone knew I was dangerous. I went out without reacting. Several family members followed. My car had already been vandalized when we arrived in the driveway. Predator spray was applied to the hood, along with red letters. But Emily had made a critical error. Grandma's neighbor had a security camera that monitored the driveway. We viewed the footage on his phone. Emily sprayed my car just minutes before I entered the house. The neighbor, a retired police officer, offered to make a report. But something else was happening. Emily's parents were walking her to the car. Her mother was on the phone with someone, anxiously discussing emergency psychiatric admission. Her father gripped Emily's arm tightly as she alternated between sobbing and yelling threats. The family fractured again after they returned inside. Some members were concerned that we were pushing. Emily to the breaking point. My mother wavered, wringing her hands and proposing that we should just move forward for peace. She continued saying that Emily was still family, and that maybe we could figure things out together. The disagreement divided the room. Half wanted Emily to obtain therapy while keeping her relationships. The other half, led by Lucy and Bella, insisted on clear boundaries. Voices rose. Old resentments resurfaced. The same factors that had permitted Emily's deception to ruin everything were resurfacing. I left the house and sat in my vandalized vehicle for more than an hour. Through the windshield, I could see my family arguing in Grandma's living room window. They would have immediately banded together against me 9 years ago. Now they couldn't agree on how to deal with the truth. My phone was buzzing with texts from both sides, each attempting to persuade me to choose their side. Marcus arrived after receiving my location pin. He looked at the spray paint damage and shook his head. We sat in silence while I struggled with my decision. I could demand maximum punishment, file charges, seek a restraining order, ensure Emily suffered legal penalties, or support the mental health intervention her parents were planning. The decision seemed simple when Emily's father tapped on my car window. He looked devastated, having aged a decade in one evening. He said that they were bringing Emily for a psychiatric evaluation right away. She had threatened to harm herself in front of them, scratching her arms until they bled. They required family assistance during an involuntary hold. I made my decision. I would favor mental health intervention under stringent conditions. Emily would have to tell the truth to everyone she had lied to. The family would keep its no-contact arrangement. She'd have to follow all therapy recommendations. The bounds could not be changed. Emily's collapse intensified on the driveway. She turned away from her parents and rushed down the street shouting that she'd rather die than be locked up. Her father apprehended her before she reached traffic. The scene was chaotic. The neighbors are watching from their windows. Emily struggles against her parents' clutches. Her mother was crying while attempting to calm her. An ambulance arrived within minutes. Emily's mother had called during the altercation. The paramedics approached cautiously, speaking in soothing tones. Emily alternated between admitting and rejecting everything, stating that we had pushed her into this, that the lies were true, and that she was the true victim. The contradictions in her comments alarmed the paramedics enough to warrant transportation for assessment. As they were about to leave, Emily attempted one final manipulation. She informed the paramedics that I had been stalking her and that it was all in retribution for rejecting me. Despite the fact that she had 12 family witnesses and proof of her confession, her accusations were denied. The paramedics had observed enough mental health emergencies to detect patterns. After Emily went, the family reconvened at Grandma's place. The previous debates melted into tired silence. We sat in the same room where it all began 9 years ago, contemplating what had just occurred. Grandma broke the stillness by asking what I needed from the family moving ahead. I specified my requirements properly. I fully acknowledged what had been done to me. Support for Emily's treatment, but with clear boundaries and no pressure to forgive or reconcile until I was ready. The family would need to rebuild trust via actions rather than words. Most essential, no more secrets or deliberate ignorance of problematic behavior. 3 weeks later, we reconvened at Grandma's house. Emily came with her parents and a therapist from the Psychiatric Institute. She had been admitted voluntarily following the initial hold. The therapist said that Emily had been diagnosed with a serious personality condition that necessitated extensive long-term treatment. Emily remained in the same center chair, but her manner had shifted. She appeared drugged, her movements slow and deliberate. When asked to address the family, she read a prepared message. The statements were correct, confessing lies and accepting responsibility, but they were delivered without passion, mechanically, and rehearsed. The therapist showed that Emily's pattern was deeper than anyone had thought. She'd spent her entire life fabricating intricate false narratives, each one building on the success of the preceding one. The accusation against me had been her most destructive lie, but it was far from the only one. Treatment would take years, with no promise of a complete recovery. Family members posed questions. Emily's comments alternated between accepting guilt and making subtle attempts to transfer blame. She claimed mental illness caused her to lie, but later admitted she was fully aware of what she had done. She apologized, then suggested that we all overreacted. The therapist made notes and occasionally corrected Emily when she tried to manipulate. Grandma spoke last. Her statements interrupted Emily's performance. She warned Emily explicitly that falsehoods had consequences and that mental illness did not excuse deliberate attempts to damage people. She reaffirmed her family's decision. Emily would have no contact with family gatherings for at least 5 years. They could reassess if she completed her treatment and made real restitution. Emily's ultimate manipulation was as expected. She grabbed her tummy, claiming extreme pain, and threatened to hurt herself if the family did not forgive her. The room's response was unanimous. Get help. Continue therapy. Take responsibility. The days of emotional blackmail had over. The therapist let Emily out while her parents signed paperwork. She would return to the facility to receive additional treatment. She gave me one last look before leaving. There was no apology in her eyes, only cold calculating. She's already planning her next move. Certain things do not change. Following that, I stood in my grandmother's backyard with my siblings and cousins. We started a little fire in the ancient fire pit. I took out the folder containing evidence, screenshots, printouts, and paperwork from 9 years of misery. I fed them one by one to the flames. The ashes flew in the wind, moving toward the fence that surrounded Emily's childhood house. My mother approached as the final papers burnt. She took out a photo album from her house. Pictures from before the lie, including family gatherings, holiday festivities, and my college graduation. 9 years of blank pages followed. She gave me a pen and a stack of recent photographs. We began filling in the blanks together. 6 months later, I hosted Christmas dinner in my home. The table was filled. Parents, sisters, children, cousins, aunts, uncles, and grandmother sat at the head, frail yet sharp. An empty chair remained where Emily would have sat, with a photo of our family from before the lie. A reminder of the high cost of lying and the value of truth. My girlfriend helped me serve dinner. She understood the whole story and had seen me through the last few months of rebuilding. My nieces and nephews called me uncle for the first time. The word felt alien but correct. Marcus joined us. We're virtually family now. Tom sent a postcard. He had discovered tranquility in a support group. I started dating again. The doorbell rang during dessert. Everyone felt tense, but it was only carolers spreading Christmas cheer. We listened from the doorway. My family pressed close together, not the same as previously, scarred yet healing, broken but mending. Certain things cannot be restored. 9 years do not come back. My parents disinherited and called me the ugly graduate. So I took the stage, and my sister's father made a move that shattered my father. I will never forget the look on their faces when they saw me go into my younger sister Camilla's wedding reception hall. It had been 10 years since they kicked me out of the house. 10 years since my own family decided I didn't deserve to be a part of their lives because I didn't meet their ideals of beauty and prosperity. The invitation had arrived at my workplace 3 weeks earlier, a beautiful envelope with gold letters announcing Camila Reyes's marriage to Daniel Cruz, the son of the city's most powerful real estate magnate. I glanced at the fine paper between my fingers, feeling the past hit me like a frigid wave after such a long period of silence. Why now? Why encourage me to celebrate family bliss when they have ruined mine? Throughout my adolescence, I was the ugly one in the family, whereas Camilla was the princess with golden hair and a flawless smile. I was the girl who had braces, heavy glasses, and bad acne. Elena, you should try harder with your appearance, my mother kept saying, as if my physical appearance were a personal choice rather than the outcome of genes and adolescent hormones. My father, a prosperous businessman obsessed with appearances, rarely spoke to me during family dinners. Everything changed the night of my graduation when I accidentally overheard my father on the phone with a business partner. Yes, my daughter Camilla is the family jewel, but the older one, well, let's just say she didn't inherit the good genes. An ugly graduate doesn't reflect well on our family business image. Those comments pierced my heart like poisoned knives. The embarrassment I felt that night was horrible, but the worst was still to come. The next day, with tears in my eyes, I approached my parents. I explained that I had heard them and knew what they thought of me. Rather than apologize, my father became enraged. Now you spy on us? What did you expect to hear? It's the truth, Elena. Camilla has always been the public face of this family. You simply don't fit into our plans. My mother, always in his shadow, nodded softly. That same night I packed my belongings and left. There were no calls urging me to return, and no apologies, just nothing. A month later I discovered from a distant cousin that they had changed the family will to exclude me. The toxic family that had raised me concluded I was no longer alive. Years passed, and revenge became my fuel. Not destructive revenge, but productive revenge. I moved to another city. I worked several jobs while studying business administration. The acne faded. I switched from glasses to contact lenses, and my body altered as a result of workout and determination. But the most significant transformation occurred internally. I founded my own financial consulting firm, which, strangely, ended up advising various competitors of the family business. Every move I took conveyed a silent message to those who had rejected me. They didn't need me. But the world did. I did not attend the wedding to seek reconciliation. I did it for justice. I wanted them to see who I'd become despite them, not because of them. I wore a red dress that showed every curve of my changed physique, as well as discreet but sophisticated jewelry and cosmetics that accentuated the characteristics they had previously loathed. When I walked inside the luxury hotel where the wedding was taking place, I felt like everyone was looking at me. Nobody knew me, but everyone was curious about the woman who was walking so confidently. The ceremony was amazing, as was everything else my family had planned. Camilla looked stunning in her expensive wedding gown while Daniel, her now husband, gazed at her with admiration. From my position in one of the rear rows, I saw my parents, now with gray hair but the same superior smile I recalled. The reception began, and I felt it was time to officially enter the life that they had denied me. I approached the main table, where Camilla and Daniel were being congratulated. When my time arrived, my sister's eyes widened. "Elena," she said in disbelief. Daniel, perplexed, looked at his new wife, then at me. "Do you know her?" he inquired. I grinned, feeling the weight of 10 years of stillness fall away in that moment. "More than you think," I answered calmly. "I'm her older sister." "Sister?" Daniel asked, staring alternatively at Camilla and me. "You never mentioned you had a sister." Camilla's face lost color, and her eyes silently pleaded me not to cause a scene. Behind her I watched my parents approach with expressions of surprise and terror. "Elena," my father said first, attempting a smile that did not extend to his eyes. "What an unexpected surprise. We didn't know if you would come." His voice retained the controlled tone he used in business meetings when things didn't go as planned. The toxic family that had rejected me tried to keep up appearances in front of their new billionaire son-in-law. "I couldn't miss my only sister's wedding, right?" I said with a courteous smile. "After all, family is the most important thing. Isn't that what you always said, Dad?" I noticed a muscle tightening in his jaw. My mother approached and hugged me mechanically, like if she were acting in a play. "You look different," she said, studying me from top to bottom. I sensed her amazement when she noticed my alteration. I was no longer the insecure teen with skin issues and braces. Before her stood a confident, successful and gorgeous woman. 10 years can change a person, I said, keeping my cool. Especially when they have to rebuild their life from scratch. No one in attendance missed the clue. Daniel, looking perplexed, attempted to defuse the situation. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Elena. Camilla never, well, I didn't know I had a sister-in-law." He offered his hand, which I firmly shook. "There are many things about the Reyes family that you still don't know, Daniel," I replied, smiling enigmatically. The discomfort was palpable. Camilla, the flawless princess, attempted to gain control of the situation. Elena promptly explained to her husband that she had opted to pursue her own career years before. We had differences of opinion. I repeated in surprise. What an elegant way to say they disowned me for not meeting their aesthetic standards. "Camilla, the humiliation I experienced in this family may be described more precisely than differences of opinion." A nervous stillness settled over our small circle. Nearby guests began to notice that something was wrong. My father, who was always concerned with looks, intervened. "This is not the time or place, Elena," he stated in a quiet but forceful tone. "It's your sister's special day." "Of course," I conceded. I wouldn't want to ruin another family celebration. I had enough with my own graduation. "Remember when you called me the ugly graduate who didn't reflect well on the company's image?" My father became pale. He never anticipated I'd heard those exact words. Daniel looked at my father, clearly surprised. "I don't know what you're talking about," my father attempted to deny. "I think you know perfectly well," I said, maintaining my cool demeanor. "But as you said, this is Camilla's day. Let's enjoy the party." I walked away gracefully, leaving them startled. As I walked into the bar, I could feel their gazes riveted on my back. The vengeance was only beginning, and it would be served cold and measured. At the bar, a man in a dark suit approached with an intelligent expression. "Impressive entrance," he said, pouring me a glass of champagne. He introduced himself as Gabriel Vega, Daniel's partner in the real estate firm. "Elena Reyes," I responded, accepting the glass. "Reyes. Are you related to the bride and groom?" he said with real curiosity. "Camilla's older sister, the one nobody mentions," I explained, smiling ironically. Gabriel looked at me with curiosity. "I worked with your father on some projects years ago," he told me. "An interesting man." A diplomatic way to describe him, I remarked, chuckling softly. Diplomacy is my specialty, he said. Though I sense you prefer direct honesty. Honesty cost me my place in this family, so yes, I value it quite a bit. The master of ceremonies interrupted our talk to announce the newlyweds' first dance. Everyone gathered around the dance floor as Camilla and Daniel performed a love tune. I looked at my sister, as perfect as ever, the focus of attention, the unquestioned favorite. It seems there's an interesting story behind your absence in family photos, Gabriel said, following my gaze. A story of a toxic family and impossible expectations, I said bluntly. I'd love to hear it someday, Gabriel replied. There was something about his expression that told me it wasn't just curiosity. Why the interest? I inquired directly. Gabriel paused a time before responding. Let's say your father and I didn't end our business on good terms, and I suspect you might have valuable information. So I wasn't the only one with outstanding accounts at Victor Reyes. Interesting. The party progressed, and I observed my parents attempting to keep me away from the most important visitors, namely Daniel's family. They clearly dreaded what I may uncover. Camilla, for her part, gave me anxious glances if I moved too close to any group where she was speaking. During dinner they assigned me to a table with distant cousins and peripheral friends. Justice looked far away, but I had other intentions. When it came time for speeches, I noticed my father standing up, his glass lifted, ready to deliver the typical father of the bride address. Dear friends and family, he continued, his voice toned to impress. Today is one of the happiest days of my life, seeing my daughter Camilla, my greatest pride, unite in marriage with Daniel. While he finished his speech, which was full of cliches about family love and father pride, I felt a rising wrath within me. How could the man who had kicked me out of his life for not being attractive enough by his standards talk about family love? When he concluded, amid cheers, the master of ceremonies said, "And now, some words from friends and family who wish to share their good wishes with the newlyweds." Without thinking, I stepped up and approached the microphone. I saw worry in my parents' eyes and horror on Camilla's face. They had no idea what I was about to say, and that terror was exactly what I wanted to instill. I grabbed the microphone and smiled at the audience. Good evening, everyone. My name is Elena Reyes, Camilla's older sister. The room echoed with a surprised murmur. Many of the attendees had no idea Camilla had a sibling. For those wondering why you've never seen me at family gatherings, I replied. Let's say I've been building my own path away from here. My father made a gesture to stand up, but my mother stopped him, perhaps thinking that an interruption would bring further scandal. Camilla, I addressed my sister directly. You were always the family star, the perfect child. Today, seeing you so radiant, I understand why. I took a dramatic pause as everyone held their breath, waiting for some shocking revelation. I wish you all the happiness in the world. And to you, Daniel, I looked toward my new brother-in-law. I wish you wisdom to truly know the family you just entered. I left the microphone and returned to my seat, eliciting polite applause and puzzled expressions. I hadn't said anything blatantly insulting, but the underlying message was plain to anyone who needed to comprehend it. Moments later, when the waiters were serving dessert, I felt a hand on my shoulder. It was Daniel. Can we talk for a moment? He inquired earnestly. I followed him into a quiet area of the room. Your speech was interesting, he said. I was quite discreet considering the circumstances, I told you. What circumstances exactly? Daniel inquired, and I could see genuine interest in his eyes. Camilla has barely mentioned your existence, and when she did, she said you had voluntarily distanced yourself due to personal differences. I weighed my alternatives. Could I tell Daniel the whole truth and risk ruining my sister's wedding night, or could I be strategic? Families are complicated, Daniel, I finally said. Let's say the standards of success and beauty in the Reyes family are extremely rigorous. I didn't meet them, so they showed me the door. Are you telling me they kicked you out of the house? He inquired incredulously. I'm telling you that you should know well the family you just married into, I quipped. Especially if you plan to have children someday. Daniel's expression changed. My statements had clearly seeded a seed of distrust. There's something else I should know, isn't there? He replied. I noticed Camilla approaching with a worried expression. The retribution had been served, but the main course was still missing. Daniel, honey, they're looking for you for photos with your parents, Camilla said with a sweet voice and a frightening glance at me. Of course I'm coming right away, he said, looking embarrassed. Elena, I'd like to continue this conversation later. Whenever you want, I said with a calm smile. Camilla dropped her pretense as soon as Daniel moved away. What do you think you're doing? she hissed. You come to my wedding after 10 years to ruin everything? Ruin it? I'm just having a civilized conversation with my new brother-in-law, I said, keeping my cool. Unlike you, I don't hide the truth about our toxic family. Truth? You want to talk about the truth? Camilla asked, her voice low but keen. The truth is, you were always jealous of me. You always wanted what I had. Her accusation caused me to laugh bitterly. Jealous, Camilla? I didn't want your beauty or your popularity. I just wanted a family that would accept me as I was. But I guess that was asking too much. You left, she said with disgust. Nobody kicked you out. Really? Rewriting history to fit your perfect narrative, typical of the Reyes family. Despite feeling furious inside, I kept my voice under control. Have you told Daniel how they modified the will a month after my departure? Or how Dad made sure none of his contacts would hire me in the city? Camilla paled somewhat. I don't know what you're talking about. Of course you know. You were there when Dad called his partners to ruin my career before it could begin. The humiliation they planned for me was meticulous and complete. My sister averted her gaze, confirming in quiet that my comments were correct. You know what, Camilla? For years, I thought I hated you. That I hated this whole family for what they did to me. But now I realize I owe them gratitude. My statement astonished her. If they hadn't expelled me, I would never have discovered my own strength. I would never have built my company from scratch. I would never have experienced the true justice of succeeding on my own merits. Company? Camilla inquired, and I caught a glimpse of something in her eyes. Intrigue, envy. Financial consulting, I answered. We advise several companies that compete with Dad. In fact, last year we were instrumental in the acquisition that almost destroyed his Monteverde project. Camilla's eyes widened with recognition. My father had been devastated by the failed endeavor, and now she knew I was to blame. Was that your revenge? She said. That was business, I clarified. Revenge is just beginning. Tonight? Before Camilla could react, Gabriel approached us. Sorry for interrupting the family reunion, he replied with a smile that indicated he wasn't apologetic at all. Elena, would you grant me this dance? I accepted his hand, leaving Camilla stunned with a puzzled expression on her gorgeous face. Gabriel provided professional guidance on the dance floor. It appears your family reunion is getting intense, he said. 10 years of silence and lies aren't resolved with a simple, cordial conversation, I told him. Your father seems especially disturbed by your presence, Gabriel noticed. He hasn't stopped watching us since we started dancing. I turned slightly to validate his statement. My father was watching us with a mixture of rage and anxiety. What conflict do you have with my father? I questioned Gabriel bluntly. He smiled enigmatically. Let's say Victor Reyes has a particular way of doing business, one that involves appropriating others' ideas and discarding those who are no longer useful to him. His statements echoed my personal experience. It seems you know my father well. I was his protege for 3 years, Gabriel told me, until I developed a real estate investment system that he presented as his own to the board of directors. When I confronted him, he fired me, alleging irreconcilable differences. Victor Reyes's specialty, getting rid of those who don't fit his plans, I said coldly. While we were dancing, I spotted Daniel watching us from across the room. When the music stopped, Gabriel led me back to my table. However, Daniel blocked our path before we arrived. Elena, I'd like to introduce you to my parents, he continued, his tone stiff and rehearsed. This surprise invitation was clearly not part of my parents' plans. I saw my mother whisper something alarming in my father's ear, and he hastily excused himself from his interlocutors and began walking toward us. It will be a pleasure, I said to Daniel, consciously disregarding my father's approach. Daniel led me to a table where an elegant couple was talking with other visitors. Mom, Dad, he attracted their attention. I'd like to introduce you to Elena Reyes, Camilla's older sister. Alejandro Cruz, the family patriarch and well-known real estate developer, looked at me with interest while shaking my hand. I didn't know Camilla had a sister, he said plainly. That seems to be the general consensus tonight, I answered, smiling. Elena has been absent from family events for a while, my father said, having just arrived. His falsely pleasant demeanor barely hid his uneasiness. 10 years to be exact, I answered, since I decided to follow my own business path. Business? Alejandro inquired with real enthusiasm. What do you do, Elena? Before I could respond, my father attempted to redirect the discussion. Elena was always the rebel of the family. She preferred to abandon the family business to do other things. I'm the founder and CEO of Altus Consultants, I told Alejandro directly, ignoring my father's interjection. Specialist in financial restructuring and strategic acquisitions. Alejandro Cruz's eyes flashed with recognition. Altis? The same firm that advised the Torres-Mendoza merger last year? The same, I said with pride. Alejandro regarded me with increased respect. Impressive work. That merger revolutionized the southern real estate market. Thank you, I responded, secretly relishing my father's look of astonishment and uncertainty. We always seek to exceed expectations. My father attempted to recover control of the situation. Elena was always very ambitious, he continued with a strained grin. But I never imagined she'd get this far without family support. Sometimes, Victor, Alejandro said, looking directly at him. The best talents flourish precisely when they're allowed to fly on their own. He turned to face me. I'd love to discuss possible collaborations, Elena. My company is considering an expansion that could benefit from your experience. It will be a pleasure, I said, handing him my business card in front of my father's surprised stare. The conversation continued, and with each remark it became evident that Alejandro Cruz, my sister's father-in-law and one of the country's most respected businessmen, was impressed by my accomplishments. The humiliation I had once experienced was beginning to morph into delicious justice in front of people who had looked down on me. When we split, Daniel took me aside. I don't understand, he said, perplexed. If you're so successful and respected, why does your family act as if you were some kind of embarrassing secret? The stakes were high. Revenge could be complete right now if I revealed everything of the Reyes family's cruelty to their new member. Daniel, I said to myself, the answer to that question could forever change the way you see your new family. Are you sure you want to know it? On your wedding night? He hesitated briefly, but his curiosity won out. I need to understand what I've gotten myself into, he finally said. I took a deep breath. I was disinherited and expelled from the family for a reason that will seem absurd to you. I wasn't attractive enough according to my father's standards. What? His expression of disbelief was clear. My father built his empire based on perfect appearances. Camilla, with her natural beauty, was always his best presentation card in society. I, with my acne problems, braces, and ungraceful figure in adolescence, was an embarrassment to him. Daniel appeared really horrified. That's inhumane. The night of my graduation, I heard my father call me the ugly graduate who didn't reflect well on the family business image. When I confronted him, he didn't deny it. He told me directly that I didn't fit into his plans. A month later, I found out they had modified the will to exclude me completely. I watched Daniel assimilate this knowledge, connecting the pieces and finally seeing why Camilla had never mentioned having a sister. Camilla. Was she okay with this? He finally inquired. Camilla has always been the perfect daughter who follows Dad's orders, I said with regret. She never defended me. Never looked for me afterward. For them it was easier to pretend I never existed. Daniel ran his fingers through his hair, clearly disturbed. I can't believe I got married without knowing something so fundamental about my wife and her family. At that point, I had a revelation. My vengeance did not consist in destroying Camilla's life or publicly exposing my parents. True justice consisted in reclaiming my tale, my truth, and letting natural consequences take their course. I didn't come here to destroy your marriage, Daniel, I informed him truthfully. I came to reclaim my place, to show them they couldn't destroy me. What you do with this information is your decision. The bouquet toss announcement interrupted our discourse. All the unmarried women gathered in the center of the dance floor as Camilla, resplendent in her bridal gown, prepared for the ceremonial toss. From my vantage point, I noticed my mother mumble something into Camilla's ear while staring in my direction. Camilla nodded gently, and I realized what they were planning: one final public humiliation. All single women to the dance floor, the master of ceremonies exclaimed joyfully. A group of young women waited expectantly as Camilla climbed onto a little flower-adorned platform. Gabriel approached me holding a glass of champagne. Not joining the ritual of female desperation, he joked. I think I'll pass, I said, observing the situation. I have a suspicion that the bouquet is programmed to avoid me at all costs. Camilla, from her lofty position, scrutinized the contestants with her glance. When her gaze fell on me, I saw that familiar smile. The one she wore when she was about to acquire what I desired. My mother, standing on one side of the dance floor, nodded discreetly. Family traditions are fascinating, Gabriel said, following my gaze, especially when they're loaded with hidden meanings. In the Reyes family, nothing is casual, I confirmed. Every gesture, every word, every exclusion has a purpose. Camilla turned around and prepared to throw the bouquet. The group of unmarried women became thrilled and stretched their hands aloft. My sister threw the bouquet with a theatrical movement toward a young woman who, based on her resemblance to Daniel, I assumed was his cousin. One more symbolic act of exclusion, so subtle that only I could correctly perceive it. The message was clear. Even in the most insignificant traditions, I remained excluded. The one who didn't deserve the chance to catch a bridal bouquet. Predictable, I said to myself. Gabriel was studying me closely. Does it bother you? He inquired. No, I answered honestly. It confirms I made the right decision building my life away from them. The party went on, and I observed Daniel was distant with Camilla, clearly disturbed by our chat. My parents, sensing something was wrong, increased their efforts to keep the couple away from me, scheduling photos, introductions, and small things to keep them occupied. During the final toast, my father took over the microphone again. His face reflected the night's built strain, but his voice retained the confident and authoritative tone that defined him. Dear friends, family, distinguished guests, he began with a smile. Before concluding this wonderful celebration, I want to thank everyone for accompanying us on this day so special for our family. He took a strategic pause. As a father, there is no greater pride than seeing a daughter fulfill herself and find happiness. Camilla has always been the epitome of the values we Reyes represent. Beauty, elegance, intelligence, and dedication. Each phrase was a dart aimed at me. The subliminal message was clear. Camilla represented everything I wasn't and couldn't be in order to deserve the Reyes surname. Today, by uniting with Daniel, we're not only celebrating the love between two exceptional people, but also the union of two families that share the same values and aspirations. He raised his glass. To Camilla and Daniel, and to the bright future that awaits them. Everyone clapped and drank. When silence resumed, something unexpected occurred. Daniel's father, Alejandro Cruz, rose up with a glass in hand. I'd like to add some words, he stated with authority. He was an intimidating figure who demanded immediate respect. Tonight has been revealing in many ways, he said, gazing straight at my father. I've learned that appearances can be deceiving, and that sometimes a family's true talents can remain hidden, or be deliberately concealed. A murmur spread throughout the room. My father was visibly tense. I'm pleased to announce, Alejandro went on, that in addition to celebrating our children's union, today I mark the beginning of a professional collaboration with a brilliant businesswoman who, curiously, I just discovered is a member of the Reyes family. He turned to face me. Elena, your strategic vision and achievements at Altus Consultants are exactly what Cruz Corporation needs for our next expansion phase. The hush that ensued was absolute. All eyes turned to me, including my parents, who were filled with shock and disbelief. It will be an honor to collaborate with you, Mr. Alejandro, I said in a clear and firm voice. The honor is mine, he said. Sometimes, the most valuable gems are those some don't know how to appreciate. This final sentence he aimed directly at my father, who appeared to have lost all blood from his face. The humiliation I had endured for years was now being translated into public justice. Cruz's grandfather, one of the country's most respected business people, had just confirmed my professional worth in front of the very family that had rejected me for failing to fulfill their superficial standards. When the celebration began to disperse, my mother approached me with a strained grin. Elena dear, what a wonderful surprise you've given us tonight, she remarked with deception. Your father and I always knew you had potential. Please, Mom, I said quietly. Spare me the hypocrisy. We both know my potential only became visible when a man like Alejandro Cruz recognized it publicly. That's not fair, she complained. We always loved you, but you chose to distance yourself. Not fair? I repeated in disbelief. You want to talk about fairness? How about the fact that you modified the will to completely disinherit me? Or how Dad made sure no local company would hire me? My mother lowered her eyes, unable to face the weight of the truth. Your father only wanted what was best for the family business, she said quietly. The best for his ego, you mean, I corrected. But you know what? I thank him for it. If they hadn't rejected me so completely, I would never have discovered my own strength. At that point, my father joined us. His normal assurance was gone, replaced with a mix of calculation and anxiety. Elena, he continued in a conciliatory tone, it seems you've been quite successful on your own. I'm impressed. No, Dad, I told him. You're alarmed. You're worried that my association with Alejandro Cruz might affect your company. You're worried that all those dirty secrets you've accumulated over the years will come to light. I don't know what you're talking about, he said tensely. Don't you? What about how you appropriated Gabriel Vega's investment system? Or how you manipulated the Monteverde contracts to maximize your profits at the expense of small investors? My father became pale. How do I know? I answered his query. For 10 years, I've followed every step of Reyes Investments. Every project, every acquisition, every dubious maneuver. Do you think my participation in the operation that almost ruined your Monteverde project was a coincidence? My father gazed at me with a mix of rage and newfound respect. For the first time, he was confronted with a powerful financial opponent, rather than the unsatisfactory daughter he had disinherited. What is it you want? He finally inquired, assuming the tone he employed during difficult talks. Now? Nothing, I answered honestly. 10 years ago I just wanted a family that would value me for who I was, not for how I looked. Now, I just wanted you to see what I became. Despite you, not thanks to you. My mother, who had stayed silent, attempted to ease the tension. Elena, darling, maybe we could meet soon, talk about all this calmly. Family is important. Family, I responded with a straight face, is who accepts and loves you unconditionally. You were never that for me. You had very specific conditions for your love. Conditions I didn't meet. Camilla approached, apparently disturbed. Her flawless makeup couldn't conceal that she had been crying. What did you tell Daniel? She questioned. He's been acting strange all night. Barely talks to me. I told him the truth, Camilla. Something you never dared to do. The truth? She said bitterly. Your version of the truth, you mean. You always victimized yourself, always wanted everyone to feel sorry for you. Her statements would have devastated me years before, but today they just proved how far away we were as a family. Camilla, I continued quietly. Your husband deserves to know what kind of family has received him. If your relationship is as perfect as you pretend, it will survive the truth. Daniel approached our little group with a solemn attitude. He positioned himself close to me rather than next to Camilla, which was noted by everyone. Camilla, he remarked in a controlled tone. I believe we need to talk seriously when we return from our honeymoon. Daniel, you can't believe what she told you, Camilla insisted. You barely know her. She's been absent 10 years and you never told me why, he responded. You never mentioned having a sister until she appeared tonight. Do you know what that tells me, about you, about us? My revenge was taking an unexpected turn. I didn't want to end Camilla's marriage. I just wanted to show everyone that they couldn't harm me. Daniel, I said, I didn't come to ruin your marriage. Camilla is complicated, like all the Reyes, but that doesn't mean she can't be a good wife. Everyone was taken aback by my unexpected defense, including Camilla, who glanced at me in confusion. What my family did to me was cruel, I said. But each person must take responsibility for their own actions. My father and mother made active decisions to exclude me. Camilla simply went with the flow, as she's done all her life. My father, who is usually concerned with keeping up appearances, stepped in swiftly. I think this is not the time or place for family discussions. The guests are watching. Always worried about appearances, I said. Some things never change. Alejandro Cruz, who had been watching the situation from afar, approached. Daniel, Camilla, he told you with authority. Your transportation is ready to take you to the hotel. Your flight to Paris leaves early tomorrow. Camilla, relieved at the interruption, clasped Daniel's arm. Come on, honey. It's been a long day. Daniel stopped for a time before looking at me. Elena, I'd like to keep in touch. There are things I need to understand better. Of course, I responded, handing him my card. I'm a phone call away. As the pair moved away, I could see the strain in their bodies. My admission had sown a seed of uncertainty that may drastically alter their relationship, for better or worse. Alejandro remained behind for a moment. Interesting family you have, Miss Reyes, he said. You have no idea, I answered. On the contrary, he said with an intriguing smile. I have a quite clear idea. That's why I'm even more interested in our professional collaboration. He lowered his voice. Victor Reyes has been a difficult competitor for years. Sometimes justice requires unexpected allies. His statements confirmed my suspicions. Alejandro Cruz was not only impressed by my professional accomplishments, but also saw me as an ally against my father. Revenge has acquired a new dimension. Justice can take many forms, I explained hesitantly. Precisely, he nodded. My office will call you Monday to finalize the details of our collaboration. As the visitors were departing, Gabriel approached again. Are you ready to go? He inquired. Almost, I responded. There's one last thing I must do. I went to where my folks were talking with the remaining visitors. I patiently waited till they were alone before approaching. I'm leaving now, I said simply. Elena, my father began, adopting a reconciliatory tone I had never heard from him. Maybe we were hasty years ago. Obviously you've proven your worth. My worth? I asked softly. Interesting choice of words, Dad. Now I have worth because Alejandro Cruz wants to do business with me? Because I represent a potential threat to your company? Don't be so harsh, my mother interjected. Your father is trying to build a bridge. A bridge built on self-interest, I said. Not on genuine repentance. But it's okay. I didn't come looking for apologies or reconciliations. Then why did you come? My father finally said. I looked him directly in the eyes. Those eyes that had previously gazed at me with disappointment. I came to close a chapter. To show you that the ugly graduate you despised became a stronger and more successful woman than you ever imagined. And so you would know that every time you see my name in business news, every time a competitor beats you to a contract with my advice, it's me, reminding you of what you lost. A heavy stillness fell between us. For the first time, I saw regret in my father's eyes. It was never my intention to hurt you, he finally admitted, his voice lacking confidence. Intentions matter less than actions, I said, and your actions spoke very clearly. My mother, with tears in her eyes, attempted to touch my arm. Elena, please. You're our daughter. No, Mom, I said, stepping back slightly. I stopped being your daughter the day you allowed me to be expelled from this family without saying a word in my defense. Biologically, we share blood, but a family is much more than that. With these words, I turned to leave. My father unexpectedly called me. Elena, wait. When I turned around, I noticed something I had never seen before in him. Vulnerability. Is there any chance of repair? He inquired, almost in a whisper. I thought about his question carefully. The vengeance I had envisioned for years had manifested in unexpected ways. I didn't experience the bitter satisfaction I expected, but rather a strange sense of freedom. I don't know, Dad. I answered honestly. 10 years of silence and rejection aren't erased with one night of forced recognition, but if you really want to try, you'll have to do something you've never done. Value me for who I am, not for what I can contribute to you. With those words, I walked away, feeling the weight of a decade's worth of pain ease. Gabriel was waiting for me at the entryway. Everything okay? He inquired, offering me his arm. Surprisingly, yes, I answered, accepting it. I think I've finally stopped being the ugly graduate to become simply Elena. As I exited the beautiful hotel, the fresh night air greeted me like a promise. The revenge I had been planning for so long had morphed into something far more powerful, genuine release. The morning after the wedding began with a clarity that seemed to mirror my mental state. While drinking coffee on the terrace of my hotel suite and perusing emails on my laptop, I felt a lightness that I hadn't felt in years. The revenge I had imagined had evolved into something more profound, personal vindication that no one could take away from me. My phone vibrated with a message from Gabriel. Breakfast? I have some information about the Monteverde project that you might be interested in. I smiled. On that night of clashes, Gabriel Vega proved to be more than just a circumstantial ally. His inside knowledge of my father's operations could be extremely useful for my future business movements. We met at a tiny cafe away from the Reyes family's normal haunts. Gabriel was already there, dressed casually but elegantly, reading documents and drinking cappuccino. Good morning, I said, sitting across from him. I hope the information is worth getting up early on a Sunday. Gabriel smiled and closed his briefcase. Oh, believe me, it's worth it. But first, how do you feel after last night? Not every day one confronts 10 years of family humiliation in a single evening. Surprisingly liberated, I acknowledged. As if I had dropped a weight I was carrying without realizing it. Justice has that effect, Gabriel agreed. Though I suspect your family is experiencing a very different sensation this morning. I wouldn't be surprised, I said as the waiter served my coffee. My father must be frantically calculating how to neutralize the threat I now represent, especially with the Cruz alliance on the horizon. Gabriel slid a folder towards me. About that, I've compiled all the documentation related to the Monteverde project irregularities. Your father didn't just manipulate contracts, there's evidence of bribes to municipal officials to expedite permits. I looked through the documents with increasing interest. It was explosive information, the kind of material that might not only harm Reyes Investments' reputation, but also lead to legal action. How did you get this? I inquired, clearly astonished. Let's say I wasn't the only employee who left the company with a bitter taste, Gabriel told him. I maintain contacts with discontented people who have meticulously documented every transgression for years. My phone rang as I was analyzing the data. It was an unknown number. I paused a moment before responding. Elena Reyes? Inquired a female voice I couldn't recognize. Yes, who's speaking? I'm Claudia, Alejandro Cruz's assistant. Mr. Alejandro requests a meeting with you this afternoon, if possible. A situation has arisen that requires immediate attention. I stared at Gabriel, fascinated. Of course. Where and when? At his main office, at 3. I'll send you the address by message. After hanging up, I informed Gabriel. It seems our weekend of revelations continues. Alejandro Cruz isn't a man for Sunday meetings unless it's something extraordinarily important, Gabriel told me. Or potentially lucrative. I arrived at the beautiful Cruz Corporation building at 3 p.m., accompanied by Claudia to the main office. The place exuded strength and success, in stark contrast to the extravagant style my father liked for his facilities. Alejandro Cruz treated me with professional courtesy. To my astonishment, Daniel was also present, with a solemn countenance and red eyes indicating a lack of sleep. Elena, thank you for coming on such short notice, Alejandro said. The situation is delicate. Daniel intervened. I canceled the honeymoon. His speech sounded hollow, lacking the happiness that a newlywed should have. What? Why? I inquired, truly astonished. My objective had never been to damage their marriage, only to tell the truth about my family. After our conversation last night, I confronted Camilla, Daniel stated. I wanted to give her the opportunity to explain herself, to tell me her version of what happened with you. But instead of that, she confirmed everything you had told me. And more. Not only did they repudiate you for not meeting their aesthetic standards, but Camilla actively participated in your exclusion. Alejandro took the floor. Normally, I wouldn't get involved in personal matters, but this has taken a turn that potentially affects our business interests. How exactly? I said, curious as to why I was being included in what appeared to be a private marital conflict. Camilla revealed that your father has been using privileged information to manipulate certain acquisitions, Alejandro told me. Information that apparently Daniel shared, trusting in his wife's discretion. Daniel seemed devastated. I was naive. I thought I was sharing business details with my future wife, not with an industrial spy for Victor Reyes. The revelation surprised me. My sister had not only assisted in my family's exile, but she had also betrayed her own husband's confidence out of allegiance to our father. The toxic family at its full expression, I mumbled, more to myself than to them. Precisely, Alejandro nodded. And now we have a problem. Sensitive information about our next corporate strategies is in your father's hands, potentially compromising millions in investments. And what does this have to do with me? I inquired, already knowing the answer. We need your help, Alejandro said plainly. Your inside knowledge of how Victor Reyes operates, combined with your experience in financial restructuring, could be crucial to mitigate the damage. Besides, said Daniel, you're the only person with family connections who has demonstrated integrity in this whole matter. The irony did not escape me. The same family that had rejected me for being insufficient, now suffered the repercussions of their own deception. And I, the exile, was being sought as a savior. I understand the situation, I said with care. But I must ask. What happens with Camilla? She's my sister, despite everything. Daniel gazed out the window, avoiding my eyes. She's at your parents' house. I asked her for time. To reconsider our marriage. And the legal aspect of all this? I turned to Alejandro. For the time being, we are evaluating options, he replied. But if we confirm there was deliberate use of privileged information, we'll proceed with legal actions. I felt a cold. The vengeance I had envisioned for years was taking shape in unexpected ways, with potentially disastrous ramifications for my entire biological family. I need time to think, I admitted finally. This goes beyond a simple professional collaboration. Alejandro nodded understandingly. Of course, but don't delay too much. In the business world, every hour counts when there are information leaks. I left the conference with a restless mind. On the one hand, the poetic justice was unmistakable. The family that had humiliated me now faced their own public disgrace. Did I truly want to be a part of their whole destruction? The phone rang again. This time it was a familiar number that I hadn't seen in a decade. Elena? Her voice sounded broken and incomprehensible. We need to talk. It's an emergency. The tone of true desperation surprised me. What's going on? I inquired cautiously. Your father has had a heart attack. He's in the hospital. My world came to a halt for a brief instant. Despite everything, the news had a tremendous impact on me. Is it serious? I inquired, feeling a lump in my throat. The doctors say it's serious. He's stable. But Elena, he's been asking for you. The revelation rendered me stunned. The father who had dismissed me from his life and erased my existence from family history sought me out in his time of vulnerability. I'll go, I said simply before hanging up. Ironically, the private hospital where my father was interned was also where I was born 32 years earlier. As I strolled through the aseptic hallways, I felt the weight of the decision I was about to make: forgive, exact revenge, or simply shut the circle and move on. I discovered Camilla in the waiting room, her makeup disheveled and her countenance sad. When she noticed me, she rose up hesitantly, as if she wasn't sure whether to approach or stay away. She came, she remarked simply to my mother, who was sitting in a corner. My mother approached, having aged 10 years in one day. Thank you for coming, she said softly, grabbing my hand. It means a lot. I haven't come for you, I explained honestly. I've come because, despite everything, he's my father. Camilla glanced aside, reluctant to face my sight. Daniel told you everything, I suppose, she said quietly. Yes, I responded simply. Though I don't understand. Why, Camilla? Why betray your own husband? Dad asked me to, she said quietly. He said it was crucial for the company's future, that it was my duty as a daughter. And you've always done your duty, haven't you? I asked without animosity, simply presenting the facts. Even when that duty meant excluding your own sister. Camilla began crying silently. I'm sorry, Elena. I really am sorry. I was cowardly. I was selfish. I never wanted. Miss Reyes? A doctor asked, approaching our group. Your father is conscious and has asked to see you. Only you. The hospital room was in a penumbra, lit only by the low light from the monitors that recorded my father's vital signs. Victor Reyes, the man who had always projected an image of unyielding power, was huddled between white blankets, attached to cables and tubes that kept his fragile existence going. Elena, he muttered when he saw me enter. His voice, once strong and forceful, was now hardly discernible. You came? Yes, Dad, I said, sitting in the chair beside his bed. I'm here. An awkward hush fell between us. 10 years of absence, rejection and pain are difficult to overcome, even when faced with death. The doctors say I'll recover, he finally added. But it's been a warning. I nodded, not sure what to say. Part of me was still the devastated girl who craved this man's acceptance. Another aspect was the empowered lady who had created her own life despite his rejection. Elena, my father said slowly, what I did to you, what we did to you, was unforgivable. His statements astonished me. In 32 years I had never heard Victor Reyes admit an error, let alone ask for forgiveness. Why now, Dad? I inquired. Is it because you're in a hospital bed? Or because I now represent a threat to your business? My father briefly closed his eyes, as if my comments had caused him actual anguish. I deserve it, he confessed. Your distrust, your resentment, I've earned it over the years. He took a big breath before proceeding. Last night after you left the wedding I had an argument with Camilla, he explained. She told me about Daniel, about the information she had gotten for me, and then, something in me broke. I saw what I had turned my family into, what I had become myself. His wet eyes sought mine. The pain in my chest began then, Elena. Literally, my heart was breaking. For what I had done. I wanted to keep my shield, my armor of indifference. But his comments were causing cracks in my defense. All my life, my dad said, I built an empire based on appearances. Beauty, prestige, the perfect image. It was all I valued. And in the process, I lost my eldest daughter. I lost the opportunity to know the extraordinary woman you became. A single tear ran down his cheek. When Alejandro Cruz praised you last night, I didn't feel threatened or concerned. I felt pride, Elena. A pride I had no right to feel. Because your achievements aren't thanks to me. But despite me. I remained mute while I processed his remarks, hoping to find the sincerity I had sought for so long. I don't expect your forgiveness, he said. I just wanted you to know that I finally see clearly. I see the damage I caused. I see the injustice I committed. And I deeply regret it. I exhaled carefully, attempting to suppress the conflicting feelings that had entered me. What about the information Camilla got from Daniel? I was curious. Did you plan to use it against the Cruise Corporation? My father nodded weakly. That was the plan. But after last night, after seeing the consequences of my actions, I told Camilla we wouldn't use it, that it was time to do business with integrity, not with manipulation. And she believed you? I inquired skeptically. No, he said with a sorrowful look. Too many years seeing me play dirty. I suppose that's why she leaked the information to Daniel this morning, confessing everything. She wanted to protect her husband from me. This revelation astonished me. Camilla had finally chosen honesty, breaking the pattern of manipulation that our father had developed. Camilla is devastated, I added. She fears losing Daniel. And with good reason, my father said. I taught her to value success and appearances above integrity. Now she's paying the price for my lessons. Our chat was interrupted by a soft knock on the door. It was a nurse. Excuse me, but the patient needs to rest, she explained politely. When I stood up to depart, my father took my hand softly. Elena, before you go, I want you to know, I've modified the will again. I've restored your part of the inheritance, as it always should have been. Not because you need it now, but because it's just. I glanced into his eyes for any signs of deception, but all I saw was genuine regret. It's not about money, Dad. I explained softly. It never was about that. I know, he replied, nodding. It's about recognition. About validation. About justice. I nodded softly and exited the room with mixed emotions. When Camilla noticed me in the waiting area, she instantly stood up. How is he? She inquired anxiously. Stable, I responded. And surprisingly lucid. My mother approached timidly. Elena, could we talk for a moment? She requested, hesitantly. We walked aside into a more private area. My mother, who had always been my father's silent shadow, now appeared to be having trouble finding words. I never defended you, she finally said, her voice breaking. I never opposed your father when he expelled you from our lives. It's my greatest shame. My greatest failure as a mother. Her honesty was evident. Why, Mom? I murmured, giving voice to a question that had been bothering me for years. Why did you allow it to happen? Fear, she answered simply. Fear of your father. Fear of being alone. Fear of losing the security he provided. She paused, wiping away tears. But what I didn't understand until last night is that I had already lost something much more valuable. My integrity as a mother. My relationship with you. Her remarks opened a door that had been closed for years, allowing a ray of understanding, if not complete forgiveness, to penetrate my heart. I can't change the past, Elena, she added. But if you give me the opportunity, I'd like to try to be part of your future. Get to know you again, as the extraordinary woman you are now. Before I could answer, my phone vibrated with a message from Gabriel. There is urgent news regarding Cruz. Call me as soon as you can. I need to make a call, I informed my mother. We'll talk later. I went aside to call Gabriel privately. What's going on? I questioned as soon as he answered. Alejandro Cruz just called an emergency meeting with his main executives, Gabriel told me. It seems that despite Camilla's confession, he's still going ahead with the plan to take legal action against your father. Are you sure? I inquired, feeling new tension build within me. Completely. My source inside the corporation is reliable. Alejandro sees this as a unique opportunity to permanently weaken Reyes Investments. The justice I had sought for so long now manifested itself in the complete devastation of my biological family. Is that really what I wanted? Thanks for the information, Gabriel, I said. I need to think about what to do with this. I returned to my mother and Camilla, who were looking at me expectantly. I have to go, I said. There are urgent matters I must attend to. Will you come back? My mother inquired, scarcely concealing her eagerness. I paused for a time before responding. Yes. I'll come back, I pledged, shocking myself with my decision. 3 hours later, I was at Alejandro Cruz's office. The real estate magnate greeted me with astonishment. Elena, I wasn't expecting to see you today, he said, indicating that I should take a seat. How is your father? Stable, I responded. And lucid enough to make important decisions. Alejandro looked at me with curiosity. To what do I owe this unexpected visit? I came to propose a deal, I explained plainly. One that will benefit Cruz Corporation, without the need for legal actions against Reyes Investments. I'm listening, Alejandro stated, placing his palms on his desk. I propose a strategic merger between Altus Consultants and Reyes Investments Real Estate Development Division. I told you. With my company as intermediary, we could create a beneficial alliance for both corporations. Cruz would gain access to Reyes's most promising projects without the legal risk of a hostile acquisition, and my father would maintain some control over his business legacy. Alejandro examined me closely. An interesting proposal. But why should I consider it when I have the opportunity to eliminate a competitor? Because business revenge can be gratifying in the short term, but strategic alliances generate sustainable benefits, I answered. Besides, my knowledge of both companies guarantees a transition without the usual conflicts of a hostile acquisition. And your father has agreed to this? Alejandro inquired skeptically. I haven't formally presented the proposal to him yet, but I know he'll consider it seriously, given the circumstances. Alejandro paused for a few moments, drumming his fingers against the table. I've always admired innovation over destruction, he said. Prepare a detailed draft of this merger, and we'll review it. But Elena, he said sternly, if this is just a tactic to buy time, it's not, I told him. It's a win-win solution, including Daniel. Alejandro nodded slowly as he mentioned his son. My son is devastated by Camila's betrayal, he explained. But also confused. Despite everything, it seems he still feels something for her. Love is complicated, I responded. And people make mistakes. Sometimes, they even deserve second chances. After leaving Cruz Corporation, my next destination was the hospital. My father was up and looked better than he had hours before. Elena, he said with a sad smile. You've returned. I told you I would, I said, sitting by his bed. And I came with a business proposal. I discussed my merger strategy in full. As I spoke, I noticed something shift in his expression. Professional respect combined with emotional sadness. It's brilliant, he conceded after I finished. An elegant solution that saves the company without compromising the future. He paused, looking at me with renewed admiration. You were always the smartest in the family, Elena. I regret having been too blind to see it. It's not just about intelligence, Dad, I said. It's about integrity. About doing business with principles, not with manipulation. My father nodded slowly. A lesson I've learned late in life. He grabbed my hand with surprising strength. I accept your proposal. Not just as salvation for the company, but as the first step to rebuild something much more important. Our family. The next few days were filled with meetings, legal documents, and negotiations. Gabriel proved to be a useful ally, bringing his skills and contacts to help organize the merger. Against all odds, the proposal began to take shape, with both firms understanding the value of a strategic alliance. A week later, when I was finishing off details at my office, I received an unexpected visit. Sorry for coming without notice, Camilla whispered timidly, standing at the threshold. Your assistant let me pass. I encouraged her to sit, observing her tired face and black circles under her eyes. Camilla, who had always been flawless, finally appeared vulnerable. Daniel and I are in couples therapy, she explained after an awkward moment. He says he wants to try, but needs time to trust again. I'm glad, I said truthfully. You both deserve the opportunity to rebuild, on more honest foundations. Camilla had tears in her eyes as she stared at me. I always envied you, you know. Even when you were the ugly one in the family. Her confession astonished me. Envy me. Why? For your freedom, she responded. For your ability to be yourself without worrying about Dad's expectations. I always lived to please him, to maintain my position as the favorite, and in the process, I lost my own identity. Her statements highlighted an aspect of our family relationship that I had never explored. Camilla, the perfect one, the favorite, had been a prisoner of family expectations, just like me. It's never too late to find your own voice, Camilla, I said softly. That's what I'm trying right now, she said, nodding. And, I wanted to thank you for the merger. Dad told me about your proposal. You're saving the family. After how we treated you. I'm not doing it just for the family, I explained. I'm doing it because it's the best business solution, and because despite everything, I believe in second chances. Camilla stepped up to leave, but she halted at the door. Do you think someday, we can really be sisters, Elena? Not just by blood, but by choice? The question took me by surprise. For years I thought of Camilla as the story's adversary, the ideal princess who benefited from my absence. But now I viewed her as a lady attempting to break free from the same harmful habits I had experienced. I think we can try, I said honestly. One day at a time. 3 months later, the transaction was finalized smoothly. Altus Reyes Cruz developed as a real estate powerhouse, combining the three corporations' knowledge to create creative projects. My father, who had recovered from his heart attack, took on a consultative role, accepting for the first time in his life, a background position. The relationship with my family remained a work in progress. Uncomfortable lunches gradually became meaningful talks. Old wounds began to heal, but scars would linger as memories of what had occurred. One afternoon I got a call from Daniel. "Elena," he said without a preface. "I wanted to personally thank you. The merger has been a resounding success, and my father can't stop praising your strategic vision." "I'm glad it's working for everyone," I said. "It's not just professional," Daniel explained. "It's personal too. Camilla is changing. The therapy is helping. We're rebuilding. On more honest foundations, as you said." "I'm happy for you both," I said truthfully. "In fact," Daniel said in a lighter tone, "we're organizing a small dinner this Saturday. Nothing formal. Just close family. Camilla insisted I invite you personally." "Close family," I repeated, enjoying the irony. 10 years ago I was barred from joining that inner circle. Now I was specifically invited. "Will you come?" Daniel inquired. "It would mean a lot to everyone." I recalled the insecure young woman I had once been, the ugly graduate whom my father had spurned. I reflected on the powerful woman I had become, capable not only of attaining success on my own, but also of providing second chances. "Yes," I finally responded. "I'll be there." When I hung up, I stared out my office window at the city's horizon. The revenge I had planned for so long had evolved into something far more powerful. The capacity to rebuild on my own terms, rather than letting the past define my future. I was no longer the rejected daughter searching for approval. I was Elena Reyes, a lady who had found her own path, her own voice, and finally, her own version of justice. On my desk was Camilla's wedding invitation, now framed as a memory of the day everything changed. Next to it is a recent photo of my father, mother, Camilla, Daniel and me at the opening ceremony for our first joint enterprise. We were not the ideal family that my father had sought to portray so many years before. We were imperfect. We were hurt. But we were healing. Perhaps, after all, that was pure vengeance. Not destruction, but transformation. Not just in my family, but only for myself. Some stories are more than just stories. They are reflections of life. If this one moved you, please help us continue to tell additional stories that ought to be heard. Thank you very much, and have a great day. Found Mom's letter. 6 months after she died, I traced 67% of the stolen money across 4 countries. When I invited the FBI, my stepmother went pale. When my father married Vanessa, I was 11. Mom had been missing for 13 months due to melanoma, which had spread quicker than anyone predicted. One day she complained about a headache, and 82 days later I was standing at her grave in a black dress with the tags still on. Dad waited exactly a year to bring Vanessa home. She worked in client relations for his investment firm. Perfect teeth. Blonde hair that did not move. The type of woman who wore heels to other people's picnics. "She makes me happy again," Dad said, his tone kind but forceful. "I need you to try, Claire." So I tried. I assisted Vanessa with her relocation, bringing boxes of expensive shoes to the closet that used to house Mom's gardening clothing. I politely nodded when she replaced our furniture, replacing family portraits with abstract art that opened up the space. I even smiled when she converted Mom's vegetable plot into a meditation patio, because raising our own food is so provincial. For 3 years, I played the role of appreciative stepdaughter. I attended her company events in the gowns she had purchased for me. I tolerated her friends' compliments on how mature I was for 14. I buried my anguish behind excellent grades and fake grins. Dad didn't notice when I stopped laughing. He was too preoccupied with Vanessa's social schedule and the new clients she had brought in. Too preoccupied with their couples' retreats and wine club memberships. Meanwhile, I slept with Mom's sweater beneath my pillow until it no longer smelled like her. Vanessa tried, in her own way. She gave me pricey birthday gifts that she would want. She threw lavish dinner parties and introduced me as our daughter to influential people who never remembered my name. She also set up a college fund for me, making sure everyone knew about her generosity. But when I received my period for the first time, Google showed me what to do. When I had nightmares about mom dying, the family dog calmed me. The breaking point occurred during sophomore year. I was cast as the lead in the school play. The first thing I'd been passionate about since mom's death. The opening night coincided with Vanessa's charity event. Obviously, you'll need to skip the performance, she remarked, not looking up from her phone. The Richardson family is bringing their son. He's at Princeton. Connections, Claire. Dad began to object, but stopped as Vanessa placed her hand on his arm. It's just a high school play, he finally said. There will be others. I walked into my room and took out the old jewelry box Mom had left me. Inside was her wedding ring, a lock of my newborn hair, and a journal that I had never opened because I was too terrified to address her dying thoughts. That night, through tears, I read it from cover to cover. Most of it was what you'd expect: her aspirations for my future, memories she treasured, and counsel she couldn't offer in person. However, the final entry, dated 2 weeks before her death, was different. If you're reading this, Claire, I need to tell you about the safe deposit box. The key is taped inside this cover. What you discover there will change everything. I'm very sorry. The key was small and silver, with the bank name inscribed on it. The following day I skipped school and went to First National. The manager recognized me. Mom's family had banked there for centuries. Your mother said you'd come eventually, he replied, directing me to the vault. The box contained a USB drive, many folders of documents, and a note addressed to me in Mom's handwriting. My dearest Claire, the message started. By this point, Vanessa has most likely totally integrated herself into your lives. I've known about her for years. I read the letter twice, my hand shaking. Mom discovered Dad's affair with Vanessa 6 months before she was diagnosed. She'd hired a private investigator to capture everything, including hotel receipts, text messages, and photos of them together as Mom was picking me up from soccer practice. The investigator's report was detailed and lasted months. There were images of Dad and Vanessa entering motels in 3 different cities, screenshots of texts that made my stomach turn. She's taking Claire to see her mother this weekend. Come over. Can you image when we won't have to hide anymore? Sometimes I wish she would just disappear. That last one was from Dad, 4 months before Mom became ill. I flipped through credit card statements, which showed dinners at restaurants I'd never heard of, on nights when Dad claimed to have worked late. Gift receipts for jewelry that never made it onto Mom's dresser. A lease agreement for a downtown apartment that was not on our family's records. But there was more. The papers contained financial documents indicating that Dad and Vanessa had been systematically transferring funds from Mom's family trust, money intended for me, to offshore accounts. They had been planning it for years, waiting for the proper time. Mom's family had developed one of the city's largest financial enterprises over 3 generations. When she married Dad, he was merely a hopeful, ambitious consultant. She'd brought him into the company, supervised him, and helped him advance to partner. The trust was her family's legacy, and I was meant to be its successor. I discovered detailed spreadsheets showing millions of dollars that had been moved through shell companies, phony client accounts, and manipulated investments. The funds passed through a dozen countries, before disappearing into numbered accounts. Dad's signature appeared on all essential documents. Vanessa's on the most. The worst part, medical records indicate that Mom's abrupt downturn may not have been as unexpected. Strange test findings, unusual prescriptions. She had commissioned private toxicology testing when she became concerned. I started feeling wrong after our anniversary dinner, my mother wrote. Just tired at first, then increasingly ill. The doctors couldn't explain my symptoms. When I began keeping track, I noticed I only felt this way after meals that Thomas prepared specially for me. Lab tests testing hair samples revealed increased amounts of heavy metals, indicating long-term exposure. Results of tests on food samples collected from our home. Consultations with 3 different medical doctors revealed an unusual progression of her symptoms. I can't prove anything, my mother said. And by the time you read this, it won't matter to me. But I couldn't leave you unprotected. The final page of her letter described her counterplan. She had set up a second, secret trust in my name. When I reached 18, the house and business that I thought Dad controlled became technically mine. Mom altered her will 2 weeks before her death, consulting with lawyers Dad was unaware of. I've made sure that what's rightfully yours remains yours, she had written. The trustees will contact you on your 18th birthday automatically, but if you find this letter sooner, you can reach them using the information in the enclosed envelope. They're ready whenever you are. I sat in the bank's private chamber for hours, taking in everything. When I eventually came out, I was different. The anguish and confusion that had characterized me for 3 years had hardened into something stronger. Something concentrated. I did not immediately approach Dad. I didn't flee or contact the police. I did something scarier. I became the perfect daughter. For the next 2 years, I delivered flawlessly. I excelled in school, joined the clubs Vanessa recommended, and attended every mind-numbing corporate event. I dressed the correct clothing, said the right things, and never revealed what I knew. At night, I scrupulously recorded their ongoing machinations. Each time Dad described a tough client or a complicated investment strategy over dinner, I looked into the firms involved, following the money through their maze of bogus entities. I made my own spreadsheets based on Mom's work. My bedroom became my command center. I installed a concealed safe beneath my bookshelves to keep duplicates of everything. I filmed chats at family dinners and business meetings where they assumed I wasn't paying attention. I shot documents that Dad took home and carelessly left on his desk, knowing that his 16-year-old daughter would never realize their significance. 6 months after finding Mom's letter, I felt prepared to approach her trustees. The envelope had 3 business cards for a forensic accountant, a lawyer specializing in financial crimes, and a retired judge who had been Mom's father's best friend. I met them at the judge's house on a Saturday, when I was meant to be at debate team practice. I told them everything over the phone, but witnessing their expressions as they examined the physical evidence was different. When the accountant realized the scope of the deception, he briefly closed his eyes. The attorney swore beneath her breath. The judge gazed at me with a mixture of pity and frigid anger. "Your mother was one of the finest people I've ever known," he told me. "What do you want to do, Claire?" I had spent months considering my alternatives. I could have uncovered everything right away, putting Dad and Vanessa to prison. I could have fled away and waited until I was 18 to receive my fortune. I could have challenged them, causing a harsh reckoning. Instead, I followed Mom's lead and pursued deliberate, precise justice. "I want to learn everything," I informed them. "About the business, about finance and law, and how to run a company. I want to be ready when I take it all back." The judge nodded, not surprised. "Your mother said you'd say that. She left instructions for us if you chose this path." For the following 18 months, I led a double life. At home and school, I was the ideal, accomplished daughter that Vanessa could talk about at parties. But 3 evenings a week, I stole away to study groups and volunteer work, which turned out to be intensive training sessions with my covert crew. The forensic accountant taught me how to analyze financial accounts, spot fraud, and navigate the intricate network of transactions that kept the family business functioning. The lawyer taught me about corporation law, contracts, and the exact legal structures that would eventually enable me to take control. The judge introduced me to his contacts in banking, investing, and regulatory bodies, people who had once revered Mom but were outraged by what had happened to her company. Meanwhile, I worked with Mom's lawyers to prepare the trust, evidence, and plan. I graduated from high school at 16, a year early. Dad and Vanessa were thrilled. Their prodigy is heading to Yale early on a full scholarship. What they didn't realize was that I'd been taking online business and financial classes, learning everything I could about Dad's company, including the accounts they assumed were concealed. "We're so proud of you," Dad told me at my tiny graduation party. "Just family and a few of their close friends. No one from my school, no one really knew me." "You've exceeded all of our expectations," Vanessa said, placing her arm around my shoulder for the photographer they'd hired. "Yale. Early admission. The board is already excited about your future with the firm." I smiled and thanked them, knowing that in less than 2 years I'd buy that board. Vanessa declared her intention to formally adopt me during the summer before college. "You're my daughter in every way that matters," she murmured, caressing my cheek over lunch at her favorite pricey restaurant. "Let's make it official before you go to college." I examined her face for any indications of genuine emotion. Her eyes were tense, and she returned her gaze to me after a calculated peek at Dad. This was not about love. It was about securing her position. If Dad died, his adopted daughter would have a stronger claim to the family business. I grinned and held her, whispering that nothing could make me happier. "We should celebrate," Dad murmured, already motioning for the check. "Maybe a weekend in the Hamptons. We could invite the Prestons. Their son is at Harvard Law." "That sounds perfect," I said, recalling the file I'd assembled on the Prestons' failing software company and the inexplicable cash influx it received from one of Dad's shell corporations last year. That night, I convened an emergency meeting of my trustees. We gathered in the judge's book-lined study after I informed Dad and Vanessa that I was spending the night with a friend to celebrate graduation. They want me to sign the adoption papers, I explained. I need to know if that affects our plan. The lawyer put out paperwork on the oak table. Actually, this could work in our favor. The adoption process requires financial disclosures. We'll get an updated picture of their assets. And it changes nothing about your mother's trust. That's ironclad. How close are we? I inquired. The accountant adjusted his glasses. We've documented 67% of the missing funds, traced them through 4 countries to accounts we can identify. It's more than enough for criminal charges. And the evidence about your mother's illness? The judge inquired softly. This was the most difficult element for me. The prospect that Dad had not only betrayed Mom, but actively poisoned her. The medical experts we consulted couldn't clearly prove murder, but the pattern was suspicious enough to warrant an investigation. Let's keep that separate for now, I decided. One battle at a time. As I prepared to depart, the judge handed me a little, wrapped surprise. Your mother left this with specific instructions, to be given to you when you were ready to move forward. Inside was an antique MLANC pen that belonged to my grandfather. She used this to sign her first major acquisition, the judge added. Said she wanted you to have it when you were ready to take back what's yours. I took the pen with me everywhere after that night. A talisman. A promise. 2 weeks later, Mother's Day arrived. Vanessa had always made a huge deal out of it. Expensive brunches, expert photographers to capture the mother-daughter bond for social media. This year, she had organized a garden party for 30 of their closest friends. The adoption announcement would be the highlight. I spent the previous week meticulously preparing my gift, working late into the night in my room, compiling documents, organizing proof, and constructing the ideal presentation. The irony was not lost on me. This was the most considerate gift I had ever made for her. The morning of the party was sunny and pleasant, ideal conditions for Vanessa's meticulously planned affair. At 7, the caterers arrived, followed by florists, event planners, and a tiny army of workers. They transformed our backyard into a beautiful venue that looked nothing like Mom's wild garden. I discovered Vanessa in her dressing room, surrounded by rejected costume ideas. What do you think? She inquired, holding out 2 almost identical cream-colored dresses. Dior or Chanel? The Chanel, I added, noting how she quickly pushed aside the Dior I had chosen. I have something special for you, I explained, presenting her a neatly wrapped package with a silver bow. Oh, you didn't have to, she replied, her surprise nearly palpable. We both knew that I had never given her a Mother's Day gift previously. I wanted to, for today's announcement. She laid the box aside. I'll open it later, during the party. More special that way. I'd rather you open it now, I insisted. It's personal. Something about my tone made her pause. She inspected my expression before reaching for the box. There was a custom-bound book within. The cover is engraved in gold, A Daughter's Gratitude. Oh, Claire, she said, obviously expecting a series of heartfelt images and tributes. Her hands trembled slightly when she opened it. The first page included a picture of Mom happy from before she became ill. What is this? She inquired, her tone strained. Keep going, I whispered softly. It gets better. Page by page, the book conveyed the story Mom had left me. Hotel invoices, bank records, and medical reports, all meticulously noted in my neat handwriting. I saw her face change as she turned each page, from perplexity to amazement, fury, and finally dread. By the time she got to the section about diverted trust monies, her makeup had started to run from the sweat on her brow. This is absurd, she mumbled, but continued to turn the pages, unable to stop. The final piece contains information about the restructured trust, the legal actions that are already underway, and the meeting scheduled for tomorrow with the FBI's Financial Crimes Division. Those offshore accounts you and Dad put up, I added casually, perched on the edge of the vanity, aren't as untraceable as you imagined. Did you know that 17 nations have signed new banking transparency agreements in the last 5 years, or that electronic fund transfers leave timestamps that can be linked to your cell phone's location data? Her face was devoid of color. Your father and I will be very interested in the terms I'm offering, I concluded, still smiling as the doorbell rang, signaling the arrival of the first guests. Much better than prison. She stood, knocking over her mimosa. You ungrateful little... Be careful, I whispered. Your guests are watching, and I'm still deciding whether to show them what's in Chapter 3. She looked down at the book, which was still open to a page containing her text messages to Dad from the week Mom was hospitalized. Messages whining about hospital visiting hours, conflicting with their dinner plans. What do you want? she snarled, adjusting her dress with trembling hands. "You're going to go downstairs and host your party. You're going to smile and laugh and be the perfect hostess. And tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock you and Dad will meet me at Judge Whitman's office to discuss terms for your continued freedom." Her gaze raced around the room, possibly looking for an exit. I couldn't find any. "This is blackmail." "No," I corrected her. "This is justice, with a touch of mercy, if you earn it." I headed towards the door. "You have 30 seconds to fix your makeup, people are waiting." The party lasted an uncomfortable 3 hours. Vanessa remained composed, despite shaky hands and a fixed smile that never reached her eyes. I played the adoring daughter to perfection, toasting her influence on my life, and saw her flinch at each double meaning that only we understood. "Claire has been such a blessing," Vanessa told the judge's wife, Mrs. Whitman. "I couldn't love her more if she were my own blood." "And Vanessa has taught me so much," I said, holding her gaze steadily. "About loyalty. About consequences." Mrs. Whitman peered between us, perceiving an undercurrent but unable to identify it. "Well, you're obviously wonderful for each other." Dad texted that he was running late for his golf game, just as well. His gift was waiting in his office, an identical book with extra documentation pertaining to his involvement in the deception. As the afternoon progressed, the visitors gradually left, thanking Vanessa on the great celebration and congratulating me on Yale. I stood next to her at the door, accepting hugs from women who smelled of costly perfume and uncertainty, and shaking hands with guys who knew my grandfather but couldn't recall my name. "Is everything all right with Cass?" one of Dad's partners inquired cautiously. "She seems tense." "Oh, she's just emotional about the adoption," I clarified. "Today means so much to her." Vanessa disappeared upstairs after the last guest had left. I discovered her 20 minutes later, feverishly packing her suitcase. "Going somewhere?" I inquired from the doorway. She spun around, a handful of jewelry clasped in her fist. "You can't prove any of this. It's circumstantial, it's—" "The FBI doesn't think so. Neither does the SEC. But feel free to run. They're expecting that. There's an agent parked at the end of our street. It has been 3 days." This was a bluff. The authorities were not involved. Yet. That was part of my negotiating technique. But Vanessa didn't realize it. She slid onto the bed, her partially packed luggage open beside her. "What happens now?" "Now we wait for Dad. Then we talk about terms." Dad arrived an hour later and called Vanessa's name as he entered. I met him in the foyer with his gift in my hands. "Where's Cass?" "How was the party?" he inquired, loosening his tie. "She's upstairs, and I think you should open this first." As he paged through the evidence, I saw the same set of emotions play out on his face. Unlike Vanessa, he remained entirely mute, his lawyer's training taking effect even in shock. When he finally looked up, his face was unreadable. "Where did you get all this?" "Mom left it for me, along with instructions." Something like pain flickered over his features, but it was immediately suppressed. "Claire, whatever you think you know is documented in triplicate and stored in multiple secure locations," I completed for him. "Including evidence about Mom's health decline that suggests more than just financial crimes." His face turned ashen at that. "You can't possibly believe that I poisoned her." "I don't know. The evidence is inconclusive, but strong enough for an investigation, if I choose to pursue it." He gently closed the book, as if it would explode. "What do you want?" "The same thing I told your wife. 9 a.m. tomorrow. Judge Whitman's office. We'll discuss how you can avoid prison." That evening, after the visitors had left, I discovered Vanessa sitting alone in the dark of Mom's former garden, surrounded by the sterile white furniture she had chosen to replace the wildflowers. "Why now?" she inquired without looking at me. "Why wait all this time?" I sat near her and smoothed my dress. "Mom taught me patience, and I needed to understand everything first." "What do you want?" For 2 years I'd imagined myself satisfied, if not joyful, at this moment. Instead, looking at this lady who had helped ruin my mother made me feel hollow. "Dad transfers control of the company to me, through the original trust mechanism. You both resign publicly but continue as consultants under my supervision. The money you diverted returns to the trust. In exchange, I don't pursue criminal charges." She laughed cruelly. "You're 16, you can't run a company." "I'm almost 17. With a team of Mom's trustees who've been waiting for this day. And I've been training for it half my life." Dad's heavy footsteps moved across the patio. Vanessa dug her fingers into the armrests. He'll never agree. I stood fixing the jewelry Mom had left me. He already has. Check your phone. While we were conversing, Dad discovered his own duplicate of my Mother's Day gift. His message to Vanessa was only 3 words. She knows everything. Dad joined us on the patio, his face worn from the waning light. You didn't have to do it this way, he explained quietly. You could have come to me directly. Like Mom did? I inquired. When she confronted you about the affair 4 years ago? Or when she questioned the trust disbursements? How did those direct conversations work out? He had no response to that. The company isn't just numbers on a spreadsheet, he countered. It's a relationship. Client trust. If you force us out, the damage could be already mitigated, I interjected. Mom's original team is ready to step in. Most of them never trusted you anyway. They stayed out of loyalty to her memory. Vanessa scowled at him. You said they were all loyal to you. That you'd secured their support. He lied, I informed her. Like he lied about the prenup you signed. The one with the infidelity clause that leaves you with nothing if you divorce. Her head snapped towards him. What prenup? The one I have a copy of, I explained. Along with evidence of your continued affair with Ryan Donahue, from legal counsel. Did you really think those hotel charges wouldn't show up in the expense audits? Her face lost its color. Dad appeared perplexed, then outraged, as comprehension dawned. You told me that was over, he yelled. It is, she affirmed, but her gaze shifted away from his. Claire is manipulating you. Actually, that's your specialty, I said, standing. I prefer direct approaches. 9 o'clock tomorrow. Don't be late. And don't try to leave town. I have people watching the house. I left them on the terrace and their angry whispers followed me inside. In my room, I called Judge Whitman to confirm our appointment, then emailed the entire dossier to my trustees, instructing them to turn it over to authorities if I didn't check in by noon the next day. Sleep did not come easily that night. I lay awake, listening to their muffled disputes down the hall, occasionally hearing something shatter and a door bang. Around 3 a.m., I heard a car start and drive away. By daylight, the home was quiet. I dressed carefully for the meeting, wearing a conservative suit that my mother had bought for my first academic competition. She wore pearl earrings. Makeup is minimal, professional. Seriously. Older than my years. When I got downstairs, I discovered Dad alone at the kitchen island, staring into a coffee cup and still wearing yesterday's clothes. Where's Vanessa? I inquired as I had previously anticipated. Gone, he stated plainly. Took her jewelry and her car. Left her phone so she couldn't be tracked. I had expected this possibility. That complicates things, but doesn't change them. She's not the primary stakeholder anyway. He looked up, his eyes crimson and hollow. You look like her, he stated, surprise. Your mother, when she was fighting for something. The comparison warmed and hurt me. We should go. The judge doesn't like tardiness. The meeting was brief, but comprehensive. Dad, shorn of his normal confidence, signed every document presented to him. Power of attorney, transfer of voting rights, and resignation letter. Judge Whitman walked him through each step with a neutral voice and chilly eyes. You understand that these terms are conditional on your cooperation with the financial recovery team. Any attempt to conceal assets or obstruct the process will trigger the criminal complaints we've prepared. Dad nodded automatically. And the company announcement will follow the script provided, citing family succession planning and a desire to honor Catherine's legacy as reasons for the transition? Another nod. Sign here and here, initial pages. When it was finished, Judge Whitman slid the last document across the table. This stipulates that you will not contact Claire directly, except through approved channels, until she turns 18. All communication goes through my office or the trustees. Dad's head snapped upward. What? That's my daughter. You can't. Sign it, I replied gently. Or I'll release the medical evidence. His hand shook when he signed the document. When he placed down the pen, Mom's M. Blanc, which I had brought especially for this purpose, his shoulders dropped with a finality that made him appear abruptly elderly. Can I at least explain? He said quietly. I've read all of your explanations, I responded. In your emails to Vanessa. In the memos justifying the transfers. In the statement you prepared for the board last year evaluating me as a potential future figurehead with limited actual authority. I think I understand perfectly. Judge Whitman concluded the discussion by notifying Dad that a car was waiting to drive him to a motel. He would be allowed to return to the house next week to collect his personal stuff, but only under supervision. As Dad stood to depart, he halted next to my chair. "Your mother would be proud," he remarked, and I wasn't sure if he meant it as a compliment or an indictment. "I know," I responded simply. 2 months later, I sat at the head of the meeting table in Dad's former office. The firm transfer had been presented as a family succession plan, with press releases highlighting the industry's youngest female CEO. Dad remained a figurehead, governed by strict contracts that tracked his every financial move. He'd kept the house and his social standing while avoiding prison. In exchange, I gained what was properly mine, plus his full submission to quarterly evaluations in which I investigated every element of his professional life. The trustees became my executive team, assisting me through the numerous decisions necessary to stabilize the company following years of Dad's manipulation. I deferred Yale for a year to focus on practical business education at the firm. Vanessa resurfaced in Miami 3 weeks after her escape. The FBI apprehended her as she attempted to access one of the offshore accounts we had detected. She spent 2 nights in jail before her father's lawyers secured her release in exchange for her full cooperation. She returned to Connecticut under rigorous supervision, residing in a company-owned condo and serving as a client liaison with extremely limited authority. The prenup I mentioned proved prescient. Dad filed for divorce, blaming abandonment and infidelity, leaving her with only the provisions outlined in our separation agreement. She battled it at first, threatening to expose the company's wrongdoing, but my lawyers reminded her that she would be the first target of any inquiry. It was not fair to Mom. Nothing could be. But it was the start of what she had hoped for me. Control over my own destiny, protection of the legacy she had established, and accountability for those who had deceived her. The search for clear proof of Mom's illness continued silently. I recruited specialists to re-examine tissue samples that the hospital had saved, requested additional testing on items from her vanity that I had left alone, and interviewed medical personnel who had treated her. The results were frustratingly inconclusive. Suspicious trends but no smoking gun. Dad maintained his innocence in that regard, even in private conversations with his counsel, where he admitted to everything else. The cancer was real, he insisted. I never touched her medication. Never altered her food. I wanted her gone, yes. I'm guilty of wishing her dead, but not of making it happen. I wasn't sure whether to believe him. Part of me wanted him to be guilty of everything, a total monster whose destruction I could pursue without hesitation. Another half badly wanted this one line to remain uncrossed, keeping a sliver of the father I once adored. The corporation thrived under new management. We dismantled Dad's convoluted scams, recovered the majority of the diverted funds, and repaired client relationships harmed by his shortcuts. I worked 16-hour days and slept on the office couch more frequently than at home. Home. The home no longer felt like one. 6 months after taking over, I sold it and moved into a downtown apartment within walking distance of the office. When the cleverly worded but transparent company statement made it plain he'd been forced out, Dad moved to a smaller house in the suburbs, losing his country club memberships and the majority of his social circle. Last week I went to Mom's cemetery for the first time since reading her letter. I did what you asked, I told her, arranging wildflowers against the stone. The company is safe. Your legacy is protected. I wish you could see it. As I turned to go, I observed a familiar figure observing from a distance. Vanessa, holding her own tiny bouquet. Our gazes met across the graveyard. She did not approach, but only nodded before walking away. Some lessons require years to teach. Some presents continue to provide long after they've been opened. Every Mother's Day since then, I've sent Vanessa the same thing. A single snapshot of Mom smiling in her garden, with a note that says, "Thinking of you today." She never responds. But I know she understands. It is the only language we have left.